Good to go.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Southborough Elementary Building Committee with design firm interviews, with the time being 7:01 p.m. on Wednesday, April 15th. So, um, our first design firm is Arrow Street. And so we'll have a series of questions for you to answer. So the first question is, what distinguishes your firm from others for this project?
Hmm. Well,
Greg, are we going to do presentation then question or questions and
Oh,
presentation?
yeah, that's right. Presentation first, and then, yep, type presentation, and then the follow-up questions. I apologize.
okay.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, no worries. Gives me a minute to think about that one.
Yeah.
Um, but in any event, we did put together a short presentation. We'll try and roll through it pretty quick, and appreciate that it's a small committee on your side, so we're happy to keep it informal. And if you want to ask questions as we go, we're happy to change things up on the fly. Um, Andrew Plum is going to share his screen in a minute, assuming we can get
Yep,
that
you should
going.
have rights now.
Okay, yeah, I sent the request and let's see.
Okay, I see it.
And is this showing in
Neary
full
School feasibility study.
and are you seeing just the
You
full
see,
screen, not the app that it's in, or are you seeing the whole thing?
Just the
uh,
app. No, not full screen.
Okay, let me just change that real quick. And
yeah, once you go into presentation mode, it decides which screens it wants to use.
1 second here. Okay, how's that look?
We're still getting
There
oh,
we go.
no, there we
There we
go.
go.
Okay, yeah, there's a little delay, so
Yeah,
okay.
much better. So in any event, we're very happy to be back to be considered again for the next chapter in the work with the Neary School. We very much enjoyed working with this group for the last few years to try and bring together a project that would reach the town's approval. And as many, I'm sure, were disappointed that that didn't happen, and so were we. But we understand you've been looking at it a fair amount over the last 9 months or so, almost a year at this point. And happy to give you some thoughts about how we might continue to contribute as we move forward with the next round of work. So if we go to the next slide, um, pretty much it's the same project team, many of the same folks that you saw the last round. Myself and Andrew will be leading the team, doing the work throughout the feasibility study. Kate Brabrisky, who's our Director of Sustainability, will also be involved. She could not make it tonight. But we also understand that sustainability will be one of the many considerations you have as you think about how to essentially downscope the project in a way that gets it to a place that's approvable. And then Andy Rodrigue, who is the project architect and involved in many of the work that we did previously, is fortunately for him, unfortunately for us, he's on a plane to Italy for vacation for next week. So otherwise, he would have joined us. But more or less, this is the core team. We've all are quite familiar with the building and understand the opportunities and constraints with that as well. Next slide. I don't know if our work needs a lot of introduction. We've been doing this for 20 plus years. We've been doing over 1.2 million square feet of new and renovated buildings. And we're pleased to say that over 12,000 students use our buildings at any time. So you've probably seen as part of our original interview for the project, a lot of that work. What we wanted to highlight for this next round is work that we do sort of off the MSBA territory. We've done a lot of work over the years for charter schools in particular and other schools that are not funded by the MSBA and so therefore are running on much tighter budgets and oftentimes tough schedules. And so we wanted to highlight that as part of our core DNA, as it were, and the work that we do and are thinking about strategic ideas for how to both meet your educational program, but also work within the budgets you have. And I just wanted to highlight two schools. You may recognize the Ben Franklin Classical Charter Public School. Craig, if you're teaching in Franklin, we did that a few years ago. That building is a completely pre-engineered metal building, essentially done sort of like a Butler building, if you're familiar with those, but done in a way that really creates a wonderful school. And then for Blackstone Valley Prep down in Rhode Island, we did a building which included a pre-engineered metal gymnasium. And in both cases, the savings from that was able to essentially get the project over and work within their budget. So again, thinking carefully about what you're trying to accomplish, what you have to spend, and how we can then deploy that in a strong way is what's critical to our thinking as we go forward.
And you had asked in your questions about, our sort of approach to the project. And I think it's important to note that with our team, we're of course going to be leveraging the work that we've already done together with you and our sort of deep familiarity with the district's educational program and the existing building, but also that we see this as bringing, fresh eyes and creative thinking and kind of that experiences that we've had that Larry was just talking about with these other school types, bringing that experience to bear here. And so, broadly speaking, we think of this process as sort of starting by really establishing the project goals with your stakeholders, sort of defining together what success looks like, and also, involving the community early, because I think that community buy-in, community awareness, community sort of priorities is part of this conversation from the get-go. And so we in the next slide, we'll talk about that a little bit more, but we move into sort of, right-sizing the project and developing alternatives. There's a number of different ways that the project could go based on the priorities that you want to balance. And we'll work with the school committee, staff, and community to determine a preferred scheme that we would develop a little bit more fully from the sort of host of alternatives that we'll have created. And there'll be cost estimating along the way in several iterations so that everyone can kind of understand the full suite of this is what it costs, this is what the sequencing and phasing looks like, this is what the educational program looks like, so that we can kind of compare apples to apples and be your guide to kind of, choose the best next step. And then looking at a sort of overall schedule and starting from the town meeting and this fall and working backwards, we really imagine getting started immediately with just sort of reconfirming those first principles and goals for the project, taking another look at the ed program. We understand that it has evolved somewhat since we last went through that with you. And then very quickly getting into developing these alternatives, which we'll touch on a few of them a little bit later in this quick walkthrough here. But you see these arrows showing townwide touch points. We think that there are some very key moments where we want to loop in the larger community and get their feedback and be able to sort of also show that back to them that we've heard them, and so that everyone can feel that they've got some ownership and some agency in the process. At the end of the day, the project's for you and for the community, and we want something that the community feels like fits their goals.
So as I mentioned earlier, we want to start thinking about what is a reasonable budget for a project like this. We know in 2025, we put a project of about 108 million in front of the community with an MSBA grant of 35 million, resulting in a net to Southborough of 73 million. And we know that was not approved. In our option one thinking, we want to think about something that we were sort of grasping, and we want to talk to this committee and others about what is a reasonable number. But if we were to say maybe 40 to 50 is a number that folks are feeling more comfortable with, and then sort of working that down, saying, okay, that gives us sort of a working construction budget of 30 to 35, 37 million, of which some amounts are highlighted as work that really needs to be done as part of the deferred maintenance, which are outlined in your option two, which is tracking at a $15 million budget. So if we subtract that, we end up with sort of 18 to 26 in this instance, million that we might work with for potential improvements to the rest of the building. But again, these are sort of a first pass at numbers, but really part of our effort throughout is to keep it on track with where people think it needs to be in terms of the budget. An example of that we did at the Lincoln Elementary School. This was with the City of Newton. This was not an MSBA project. This was a renovation of a 1960s parochial school building shown pretty much on the right there, and an addition of a gymnasium, library, and front entrance hall on the left. As you'll see on the next slide, we were able to produce that for roughly $42 million. Thorough renovation of the existing building, a brand new heating, electrical, and lighting systems, and then a new addition on the end. And we were pleased to be able to do that through the public bid process, and we opened that building last fall, 2025. So we took advantage of some of the more recent discussions in the construction industry about how to keep it cost effective.
And so, our sort of recipe for success on a project like this starts with, really clear program priorities at the front end, and doing a lot of work to identify the unknowns. Those are things that can have cost implications and later on in the process. And we work hard at really understanding all of the existing conditions and identifying all the things where we need to be digging deeper in order to make sure we aren't surprised when the work does start taking place with renovation projects like this. And, finding ways to simplify phasing and schedule as much as possible. And when there's long lead items, identifying those and getting out in front of them. These are just some of the things that we did on the Lincoln Elliott School that helped us to keep it on time and under budget. And, looking at the Neary School, we're going to spend a few minutes just looking at this existing building and a couple different levels of how we might think about the work. But there's a mix of spaces that are, many of which are smaller than what the MSBA guidelines would give us, and that we had been working with in the prior iteration with the town. But they work well for their intended use, and they could have another life. And especially there's this flexibility now where we're not having to necessarily meet pre-prescribed sizes of things. And that's going to allow us to work with the existing structure in a more efficient way and be very strategic about how and where we adjust spaces so that we can get that alignment with the educational program. And so in the next couple slides, we'll look at a few different levels of how we might start to do that. And, the first one being, if we were just to address this is sort of the option 2, where we're looking at the deferred maintenance upgrades. What's really going to have the most visible change within the existing school would be the required ADA upgrades, which we've kind of identified certain areas where we know, that would start to take place around bathrooms and certain doors and such. And we've had, good success with being very efficient with that, where you don't necessarily have to tear out the whole entry to a classroom and rebuild it. You can install automatic door openers, for example, as an efficient way to kind of address those types of things. So we've got lots of tools in the toolbox for addressing these different types of issues. A somewhat more involved renovation, but still kind of a light touch, would be looking at also picking the core classrooms, the cafeteria, gymnasium, and sort of refreshing the finishes for these things. Maybe renovating the district offices into educational spaces. And if there's enough money available, maybe focusing on the building core, which is sort of in the center of the building here. That could be a location for a somewhat more intense renovation, where you could create some spaces that are like these learning commons or breakout spaces that we had talked about previously with the district. That could be a site for something like that. And then just looking at, educationally, there's certain things that we could be looking for improvements where we're potentially, like the existing cafeteria could be converted to media center or a combination of media STEAM center. The existing gymnasium could be converted into cafeteria, and potentially the gymnasium could be something that's an addition. It could be maybe one of these pre-engineered buildings like Larry was addressing at the very front end of this. And some of these things are just sort of on the table now when they weren't before, because the town is sort of choosing to make its own decisions and not be having to meet all of the sort of same requirements as last time. And then this final diagram is just showing a sort of a more holistic look at the existing building, where you could imagine that the academic wing has a little bit more work done on it to create these small group meeting rooms and some learning common spaces that were goals in the prior round and could be done in a sort of scaled back way, but a very strategic and effective way here. And this also considers, perhaps there is more of an integrated addition to get you a properly sized gym and its associated spaces, and then kind of reusing that to make this sort of STEAM media art cluster in the heart of the school. And that's one way that it could play out, and of many, but we wanted to kind of give you a sense of that spectrum.
Yeah, and you had asked us about community engagement going forward to the community. We sort of see it as three different touch points, as Andrew was mentioning. Initially in June to talk through existing building and the goals for the evolving educational program. Second meeting in July, thinking through the alternates, essentially trying to establish where the town feels the priorities lie and where we feel like that's where we want to invest our dollars. And then finally, as we develop a preferred scheme, really presenting that to the community in ways that they can understand it, understand how that would work for them, and then hopefully in the fall be in the ability to approve that through the town meeting process. Of course, up to you, the team, as to how that actually plays out, but that's our initial thinking about it. So with that, I know you wanted us to keep it short. We may have gone a little longer. Sorry about that, but we had a lot of interesting thoughts to share, and happy to take your questions.
All right, thank you so much. As I've already stated this, I'll say it one more time. So what distinguishes your firm from others for this project?
Yeah, I think, and hopefully we demonstrated in our short piece there, is we both know the building because we've been all the way through it with our engineers, and so we understand and have been working with it for a few years now. We understand the educational goals of the district, and so we can work with them to try and bring as much of that to creation as we can. And we also feel like we have creative and strategic thinking ideas that we can look at now, again, without the MSBA looking over our shoulders, in ways that will create a building that hopefully meets your educational needs, but at a price point that folks can support. So, we feel like we have the depth of experience, understanding of the ed programming, and the ability to think creatively about buildings in a way that would help get us through this next chapter.
Yeah. And I would just add that, time, it takes time to do these things, and to be able to move quickly and be agile is of value. And I think that's a real differentiator here between us and others, just given that we've already invested so much time in understanding, the district and the building and so forth. So we're well positioned to move fast.
Thank you. Andrew, do you want to ask the next one?
Sure. Why are you the right partner for a community that has already gone through a challenging or unsuccessful prior process?
Well, we sort of outlined our understanding of the building and our approach, and I think we, as you guys, were disappointed when things didn't pass. And I think to the extent that we can help you identify a project that will reach consensus among the community is our goal on this. To the extent we can say, we heard folks in the district saying, isn't there something smaller that we can do rather than a new building? And we're perfectly ready to roll up our sleeves and help define what that could be and get you to the point where folks are willing to listen to that again.
Heather, would you like to ask the next one?
I actually unfortunately cannot access them right now. My town account is in conflict with my Syracuse University account, and we've been working on it, but I can't get to them at the moment. So I
Okay.
apologize for that.
No, no, no worries. I will gladly take it. What are the biggest risks you see in this project, and how would you mitigate them?
I would say the risks are always in an existing building. In finding things, we've been through it quite carefully. We have a set of drawings, but inevitably there's going to be things that we find in the process. And so what we want to do is carry sufficient contingency to cover those. Some of them are deciding, for instance, uh, outside repairs of the building. We can do a light touch, a medium touch, and a heavy touch, and sort of where we think about how we spend our money on the outside of the building is important, both for the longevity of the building, but also financially. And doing things like unit pricing. So we may decide, okay, we're going to do some amount of brick repointing, but we're not going to holistically repoint the facade, but we're going to carry some amount of repointing. We've done that before also on roof. You peel up the roof and you may find that the roof deck has deteriorated in places because of some prior leaking. And so what we would do in the final bidding is to carry some numbers that say, okay, assume this amount of square feet. And if it's above that, then it's a little more money. If it's below that, then you get some credits back. That is certainly at the end of the process. We understand this is a feasibility study. So taking that into account as we go, I think is important to us to say, okay, how do we protect in the early pricing those kind of strategies so that you're not exposed on those sides.
I would just also add that there's a risk of, because we've been through this, is of the community feeling disconnected. And perhaps you can tell us a little bit about how that has transpired, the conversation since the vote. But I think that it's really important that it's not that the community finds out at the end, here's the new menu of options. And instead that they feel like, okay, we understand the process you're going through and how we key into it. And by the way, here's what really matters to us. And then they are able to see that we have heard that and that we're reporting it back to them. Because that builds consensus, and it's a different kind of risk, of course. I mean, Larry talked about the financial risks associated with existing buildings and hidden conditions, but everyone's investing time and money to take another crack at this, and you really want to be sure that you've got alignment with all the stakeholders throughout.
Greg, if we skip forward to one of the other questions, I think just elaborate on that. One of the questions we had is, what strategies have you used to help communities reach consensus? Which I think elaborates a little bit on what you're talking about, but kind of what specific strategies?
Yeah, I mean, we used a lot of different techniques, but it comes down to creating lots of opportunities for the community to hear about and learn about the project, and to have that, to meet them where they're at. That can be, going there physically to existing events in town, but also having a digital presence where people can see the progress. They can read the reports if they want to. They can understand what's going on, and they can provide feedback. And we can then, sort of take that information in and report it back out. One of the techniques that we've used is to, if there's a few options on the table, to actually have a banner, with a QR code that that maybe it's in the middle of town or somewhere that's well traveled, or people can, it's at the, branch library or whatever, and they can kind of say, oh yeah, this is, you know, for a particular set of issues, they can kind of look at it, and on their time, when they have the time and space to think about it, they can kind of scan their phone and then vote, and then they can see after a couple of weeks, we can kind of put up a new banner that says, "Hey, here's what we heard." Um, so it's really about kind of this call and response and being transparent and it's not always easy because not the town doesn't you don't have the same level of engagement evenly across everybody, right? So it's sort of like also working with your team to brainstorm the best ways to build engagement with the various groups.
Um, and looking at how would you, I think you talked about we have two options here, and how would you help a community understand the true trade-offs between short-term cost and that long-term value?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So if you think about the MSBA, their mantra is a 50-year building. The reality is a pre-engineered gym is not going to last 50 years. It's probably 20 to 25 years. And so then to your point, that's in exactly a trade-off. And so it's fairly straightforward to price them out both ways and see, okay, here's the difference. But a lot of times if we're saying, okay, we need to work within a budget that works for folks, we're sort of narrowing ourselves in. I think to me, the scope as we develop it and giving people the choice to be able to say, okay, everybody wants just the right size, right? It's the Goldilocks syndrome. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. And that's really what we need to do is find that point where everybody says, okay, I understand I have to invest. That's what I can feel like is affordable, but it also gets me across to the things we need. And, likely all buildings need to be sort of worked on as it goes. And we may have to leave some things off the table to get to a price point that people want.
Yeah, and just in terms of techniques that we use, to just so people can understand apples to apples, if we've got 6 or 7 different options that we're looking at, it's really important to graphically and with just the most important information show how they relate to each other so that people can understand what option C and option D, what they're giving and trading off from each other. And so we have different kinds of scorecards that we use. We use sometimes interactive dashboards and things like that to help people understand the data and kind of pair that with the more qualitative stuff like, well, how's the space going to change or what's that going to mean educationally for me?
Craig, what number we've done? What, 1, 2, 3? What have we done so far? Just to make sure.
1, 2, 3. That was
5, right?
6. That was renovation versus long-term investment. We've talked community process. One of the elements I think is how will you coordinate with ongoing or the recent work, such as roof studies, and obviously you've done the prior analysis, avoid the duplication and ensure alignment.
Yeah, I think the roof study is an interesting one, and we would want to look into that pretty carefully to understand what they were seeing when they did that work. We haven't really pried it open, so to speak. But really that impacts a lot of different things. When you start putting a new roof on, you start thinking about more insulation, which starts then impacting your structural loading. As I mentioned, oftentimes the roof decking, when you peel it up, you discover some issues. You want to do a fair amount of testing. So I think, we want to build on that, not reinvent it. And so understand what they were seeing when they did their study in a way that we can say, okay, that makes sense to us. That is really part of one of your fundamental needs for the deferred maintenance option.
Um, I'm going to combine the two together. Um, so one, how accurate has your cost level estimates been on past project, and how do you account for market conditions and cost escalations?
Yes. The market seems all over the map these days. And I know when we were going through this last year, we were talking about tariffs, and this year we're talking about oil prices. Um, we're working closely with our cost estimator. I think in the feasibility study, we want to put in enough contingency to sort of protect the project without overloading the project so it becomes untenable. As we go further and deeper into a project, if we were to take this into construction documents, there's a whole nother layer of construction, and whether we go with a design build bid, Chapter 149 process, which there is some savings. That's why we went that way with Lincoln Elliott. But you're not working with your contractor throughout the development of the project. Or going with a CMR, CM at risk, which we talked about for the new school, in a way that helps to mitigate some of those risks. You work with them to develop allowances for things that you might think you need to carry. So, we're certainly open to either approaches. And, I think the Lincoln Elliott School was a good example. We put that out to hard bid. We got some good numbers, and we worked hard to make sure the project was well documented in a way that we could keep change orders to a minimum for renovation.
I think the last category is the schedule and implementation. So what factors could impact the timeline, and how would you address those delays?
If we're talking about the sort of feasibility study portion, we do want to make sure we talk about the summer and kind of, we're getting started right in the thick of things, right as a lot of people are going away and such. So we would want to coordinate closely our community meetings and so forth, so that we're making sure that we're getting the word out. But the schedule in general, we are have a very good track record with being keeping our projects on schedule and on time. And that has to do with a good set of documents, that has to do with doing the upfront work where you're trying to minimize the number of unknowns. And we do have the advantage of having done some work so far in the prior study, but to minimize the surprises, to keep the work flowing smoothly once it gets started, I think is a key factor.
And I would just say on the educational side, June is sort of a hands-off month with most educators. They're so busy trying to wrap up the school year and do all the things that have to get done. And Craig, you're probably aware of that as well. So the basic goal would be to use the month of May to confirm the program, understand the changes that have been talked about to the educational program to get back to the existing building and the 4-5 configuration. Really understand that in May, in a way that we can then begin to build on that through studies in June. I do think we want to be really cautious about going to the community in July. In some ways you might say, well, we'd like to go in August, but I think that really would be a difficult time for folks to think, oh, well, you presented this whole thing in August when everybody's on vacation. How could anybody tell you what to do? But in any event, so saying, okay, sometime in July at a reasonable point, not too close to the 4th, not too close to August, is a point where you say, okay, here's when we can reach out to the community and try and get the feedback we need and want to boil ourselves down to a preferred scheme so that we can do another round of thinking about it and be ready to present to folks that sort of further developed scheme in September. And I do think that's going to be the pinch point, right? Is saying, okay, getting from option 2, which is, oh, we only spend 15 million or thereabouts, to option one, where you say, okay, what is a magic number that people are comfortable with? I think that could be tricky to get folks in alignment on it. And so that to me feels like, as Andrew was pointing out a few minutes ago, is a risk point for keeping on schedule.
And Larry, one question also
Yep.
to elaborate on your proposal was, are you comfortable that you and Kate specifically, as your kind of lower percentage and working on the other school, have the time that we need to pull this off in the timeline we have, or are you have concerns?
Absolutely, we have the time. We got a lot invested in Southborough.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to see it get over the finish line and get you guys a building that works. One way or the other. So yes, we will make the time and energy.
All right. Well, that does it for our questions and for the time that we have with you guys. I appreciate your time and effort, and our hope is to um, uh, hear some more proposals and have opportunities for us to discuss, and then move forward a candidate to some reference checks, and go from there.
Okay. All right.
And as you can understand, time is of the essence, so we will be moving quickly.
Perfect. Yes. No, we get it. And if there's any additional information, questions you guys have as you come up and think about things, feel free to give us a shout. We're happy to reconnect if we can be helpful.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Have a good night.
All right. Well, we got a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. And I've managed to override. I can get to the questions now.
Yeah.
The professor account, because it's at large but full access, it just usurps everything, every single
And
thing.
then
And
Heather, I
Outlook or
sent you
Blackbook.
the questions into your Gmail too,
Okay, cool.
and a spreadsheet version of it.
Yeah, I appreciate their safety systems, but it makes logging into external systems a pain every time. But we're good now.
Got so excited, I want to ask questions.
All right. Welcome, RGB.
Right.
Now or not? There we go.
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, we can hear
See
you.
Wonderful.
We're a few minutes early. Would you like us to hold out for a bit?
I think we can probably get started a little. early if that's okay with you. We're on time for once. We left a buffer in there just in case, but we ended up not needing it. So
Wow, that's great. Increase the volume. Yeah. Increase the volume a little bit. See if we can get the volume to come up.
Yeah, I'll turn it from here. Can you guys? It's okay.
We'll see. And there's some speak to, there's Craig. Can you say something to it?
Yeah, can you hear me?
is that any better?
Oh, it's down. Yeah.
Bueller.
It comes.
Our neighbors will be able to hear
Our neighbors can hear us, but there's no one around, so.
It's okay.
All right. So we'll have a series of questions for you after you give your presentation. So the floor is yours.
Wonderful. So we're gonna share our screen and
The volume up a little bit more, Mark, because we can hear any questions for the clerk. So both Heather and Andrew look familiar. Sorry. I don't know why. Is it coming through just the computer?
just like, yeah, just
Okay. No, no.
Just sit that one right there.
Yeah.
And it's
All right, we think we're there.
yeah.
you guys see this?
Looks like it's starting. Just give it a second. There's usually a little lag.
Okay.
Yep, we see it. It's not in presentation mode, but we see the slides.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this good?
Yep, you're good now.
All right.
Okay, we're ready? I see a camera in here, so we can see that they're
Yeah.
we'll wait. My name is well, I'd like to thank you all for having us tonight. I know this is kind of a fast type presentation. We've got about 10 minutes, 20 minutes for questions. So we're gonna go through with a lot of information, and we hope that if you want us to stop during the presentation, you're welcome to do that. Or just ask questions in the back, and then we can ask, I'll bring those slides back up. So we have read all the information in front of us. We know what the scope of the work is. We'll go through some of the examples of exactly what we're gonna do. But first and foremost, I want to introduce ourselves. My name is David Tewatcher. I'm CEO, Managing Principal. To my left, your right is John Racine, Project Manager, also a Principal. To my right, Andrew Barkley, Lowe's, another Principal, but he's Educational Planner. And then Monica Hanley, who's our Senior Interior Designer. To the right is our org chart of all our engineers that we frequent quite often on school jobs. Next slide.
Right.
So what we want to talk about is what typically RGB gets called into, and you guys may or may not know this, but Southborough, we helped you out in the last school for some challenging efforts that we had there with budget constraints, and it's very, very similar now. But other towns have done this successfully in the past, where they've asked us to come in and help them when they're in a challenging type of an environment like we all are right now. And we help them out, and we help them really well. So in doing that, just recently Hudson just asked us to do a roof job to get it out by May for bidding, and they gave us 3 weeks. We got it done in a week and a half because we understood that, and we understand speed and what it takes. So tonight, we're going to talk about your project, but also some of the other projects we've worked on in comparisons, so you can see exactly the skill set we bring to the table tonight. Next slide.
Yeah.
So history, we're 80 years old. We've got all professionals, sustainability, second in New England with the net zero building, and we cover just about all markets with different segments. These gentlemen do educational markets. Next slide. So a little bit of I wish we could get that bar off the top so I can use that a little easier. So I just talked a little bit about the 1970s aging building. The town invested in quite a bit of an analysis that we all reviewed. And then the MSBA didn't approve it. So now we're looking at a possible roof evaluation system of about 4.5 million with a couple of options. So that's our task at hand, John.
Yes, so we understand that obviously there's been quite an investment in this project already, so we want to build on that. We don't want to start from scratch. We certainly have done that in a number of different projects that we'll talk about today or tonight, this evening.
Yes.
And we'd like to continue that. We're going to provide an analysis just to confirm that those findings are still valid today. And we also want to keep the community, obviously, the priorities. You understand what you want to get out of this school, and we want to keep that with our study, and we want to demonstrate that and be a partner with you. We also are going to summarize the findings so that it can be conveyed to the public, and obviously project and schedule and estimates are key for this, and we're going to continue that all the way through the process.
Okay, I'm Andrew Barclay. I'm a educational planner, learning environment planner, and I brought up some images here tonight to describe the process that we just currently here at RGB have been following. So it's not specific to Neary School, but this is very similar to the MLK School as an example of a project we're deeply involved with right now. An existing elementary school in Providence that was built in 50 something. So it's needed some work. Providence is going through a process of trying to come up with the money and the funding. We looked at the existing school. We did a number of scenarios to see, can we keep the existing school? Can we bring it up? Can we renovate it and modernize it to bring it up to 21st century level? Another option was looking at providing a new program on the same site, a pre-K to 8 school instead of a pre-K to 5, which it currently is. So we did a scenario number 2, which was a pre-K to 8, new program on existing site. And then we also helped look through the process of saying, okay, if there's not enough swing space in the current school, could the current school stay online? We build a new school adjacent to it on a city-owned piece of property, which is a park, and then take the old school down once the new school was in place. So we've done a series of planning exercises here to look at ramifications of cost for renovation, new and renovation sort of simultaneously. And down at the very bottom here, you see some of the cost ramifications between 92 million to 74 million. Scenario 2, 85 million to 55 million. So we concurrently look at these different plan types, develop strategies on how the school maybe come into play, and then those costs. And this is always communicated back to you, in this case, Providence Public Schools. So
how this relates to your school.
And yeah, exactly. So, and then we have, I think the next slide, we go to the next slide. This is another program we've been asked. This is in Westport, Mass, existing high school that was underutilized. The town went ahead and built a new school and then abandoned their old high school. And the city said, what can we do with the existing building? Because it costs money to maintain a building without a whole lot of purpose. So by doing nothing, it still takes money. And the town wanted to investigate the process of keeping the school, abandoning it completely, reusing the entire complex, or we came up with the idea of breaking into component pieces and giving each of those component pieces a different purpose. So again, adaptive reuse, a community campus, an addition, and saving the valuable parts of this building that the town would otherwise lose. So
yeah, we went through a lot of community outreach on this project.
yes,
We had several public meetings. We determined what was the best. We took those public meetings and we took the information they gave us and we made other different type scenarios, or we went in front of them again. And we were very, very successful in letting the town know that the struggle we had and the struggle the town had and how we came out of that struggle and that challenge to come up with these alternative plans.
and that's exactly, Dave. I mean, it's a great segue, is that we asked first the community, we bring this to them. So it wasn't us as architects working in a bubble, coming up saying we know best. It was talking to the teachers, talking to the town administrators, speaking with the community at large, and collecting their information, compiling that, which is what led us to this option. So, example, next slide. I could start on this one.
Sure.
On your right is an existing conditions report. We typically go in and look, again, you've done a lot of work at the Neary School. we typically come in and do like a forensic study or existing condition study to really understand what your structure is doing, what your HVAC is doing, what type of air quality you need to improve. From all those assessments, we develop a cost estimate of what might be life safety, what needs to come first, what might take second place, third place. So if you had to do a phase construction, you know what those costs are going to be immediately and what they need to be over time. So again,
And a lot of times this will create your capital improvement plan as well, if we weren't able to achieve all of the items that are on the list.
yes.
So again, we prioritize, you can see where the probable costs in priority. So obviously, as Andrew mentioned, life safety is number one, so we'll always prioritize those items. And next item would be, finishes or something of that nature that are not life safety, but something that could really use upgrading. And we put that into the priority 2 bucket. And then number 3 is things that are maybe recently changed or don't need to be changed for the next 7+ years.
So I think what we do different than most firms is we work backwards. So you have $15 million, we'll work backwards to find out what you can get for those $15 million. As Andrew alluded to before, we go through those buildings, almost like the old Price is Right show, where you could go shopping for a certain amount of dollars. The same thing takes place. We evaluate with this chart in front of you. You've got $15 million. You pick it, we go to the public, we sell it to the public, and we get great success.
Yeah, because we know you have somewhat limited funds. Strategically understand what you need to do now and what you might be able to get capital funds for in the future to help improve your school. So
We can still do a lot with 15.
oh yes, exactly. We're doing that right now. We have a school, we found out today we had 13 million. By the end of the meeting, we ended up with 11 million because they hadn't accounted for all the soft costs, but we still are going to do as best we can.
And work backwards.
Exactly, work back.
Next slide.
So, next slide. Oh, this is part, I talk too much, but educational planning, I get involved in what your program needs. So what's on the left is actually sitting and talking and understanding the program you currently have, the spaces you currently have, how they might be affected, they might be changed or improved. And then to the right is typically what is submitted as a bubble diagram, but it talks about the adjacencies, the connectivity within the schools for your educational and curriculum delivery. So it's about bettering the environment, bettering the sort of the conditions that you find within your school now.
And that helps a lot with the public too, because the public can understand that to be more appreciative and want to go behind what you want to do to the school rather than being opposed to it.
Yeah. I guess the next slide. This is some examples really quickly on public outreach and community engagement. I normally love to do educational facility planning. Well, that is talking with school administrators, teachers, students, and having visioning sessions, say within the community of the school itself. That gives you a fantastic amount of information about how the school is performing, where it may be improved. That's collected and then can be presented back to you as a team, to the school. And then the other examples are interactive sessions that I have that are open to the community. We'll send a flyer out. We can either have a digital, like we're doing now, a digital meeting, or you have an in-person, face-to-face meeting where you bring up the different components of the school and say, where could we improve? Where do you need improvement, say, in technology, safety and security? Your leadership group, your teachers, what do they need to better their environment and their process of instruction? Do you need something to be improved in special programs? So anything about the learning environment is typically just brought up and discussed in a broad sort of community meeting. And that information is collected, processed, and then provided back to you as the executive team or to the administrative team. This helps influence what we would do for improvements to the Neary School. So
Next slide, the last.
Yep. So we took the opportunity to take a look at your direction, what we really need to do between now, if we're brought on board April 20th, and into the meeting sometime this fall. So if you look at each step, it's basically we start off with Andrew's and his team to talk ALAP. Essentially, let's verify what you have already put together with the previous review and through the MSBA process. What are the must-haves from that? Because again, we don't want to start over. Has any of that changed over the past 2-3 years? It probably hasn't. We'll verify that. Then we go through the facility assessment. Just again, deterioration will continue over the next couple years. So we'll take a look at what are the priorities. Is there a safety needs? There are security needs, technology needs that must have. That gets incorporated. We assemble that information, and then we sit down again and verify this is the direction that we want to go. And then from that direction, we'll come up with your scenarios. Does it make sense to do a full rehabilitation to the building? There an addition with a smaller rehabilitation? Is there do we patch for the next 15 years or the next 5 years? What's where are we? How does it work with your schedule, with the school's direction and budget? And then we want to be prepared for you to have your meeting. Well, right now I have it as October 22nd. Whether that's the right date or not, we don't know. It's early on, but at least we took a quick look to see what we can do.
When we go after projects, we only go after projects that we think there are challenges that we can overcome. The easy projects are the new schools. The difficult projects are projects like this, where you have limited budget and you want to get a lot out of it. And it's convincing the public how important education is, not only to the kids, but also to the town buildings, the tax rates. That's what we do best. We've shown you that in the past with that last project we did. Ultimately, it started up here and it ended down here, but we got it built. It's something you can say you did, and we'll do it again. And we want to do it again for you guys.
And we're also willing to, we know you have a roof project, underway and you have money allocated to that. So through this process, if we find that you can save a piece of the building or hold off on working on a section of the building, we may be able to do something to that where you phase work. We're willing to work with any other architect, OPM, engineer as well. So
Hudson School, we just saved 50% on a roof.
Yeah.
So Hudson, Framingham, Westport, they all call us when they're in trouble. We help them out. We do a nice job. We want to work with you guys as well.
All right, we make 10 minutes. I don't know.
12 and a half.
All right.
On time.
How do we do, guys?
All right. Thank you. Very much appreciate that. So we'll run through and ask you a few questions just to follow up. Some of the questions we might ask you might have hinted at, or just you feel free to repeat or build upon what you've already said. But what do you think distinguishes your firm from others for this specific project?
I touched on we're very different. We just don't go after every project. We go after specific projects that have challenges that we can demonstrate our ability to get up in front of a group of people. You did a big report. You probably paid a lot of money for that report. You went out in front. It didn't pass. Now everyone's worried. What do I do with that information? If we take that information, we can make something like we did in Westport, something out of the past. Westport went 3 times. They went for bonds. They failed. The 4th time, we got more traction. There was more people that showed up in our meeting than the town meeting. That's sensational. It's because of the advertisement. It's because of what we sell and how we put it to the regular person so they can understand the benefits of what we're trying to do. Those all makes us different than our competitors.
And to that, I think that all stems from our listening. I think we're known to really listen to the client and what is the issue, what's the problem, what's the root, and how do we work together to solve that issue.
And one thing too is trying to get consensus, especially when you reach out to the broader community. You're never going to get everyone to agree, right? You're going to get different groups that have different interests, but you do have to, like John said, we have to listen and try and sort through, and then come up with a response that addresses as many people, as many groups as possible. That's the thing that makes something successful or positive.
And I think that's what was really successful in Westport as well.
Yeah.
There was a lot of conflict, a lot of discrepancies, a lot of people were just tired of going through all these reports and paying money, and it's like they couldn't see anything coming out of it. More and more money with no results. So it was nice to get the community involved, and the fact that so many people showed up it showed that they had the interest in coming to a solution
Yeah,
that
we
we
had-
can propose.
Everyone, we had people from the EMT department, the police department, council on aging, the food bank. It wasn't just teachers and parents, it was, real people that lived and said, I don't really have, say, a vested interest, but they wanted to make sure that their community was doing something positive, so. They understood it was for the students in the end, but town hall, members, the planning department, there were a lot of people invested in that project, so that was really great outcome.
Sorry, Craig, that was a long answer to your question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, you ended up covering, I think, the second follow-up question to that. So I think we'll move to Andrew. Do you want to ask about approach to risk and uncertainty?
Certainly. I'll combine the two questions together.
Yeah.
So, what are the biggest risks you see in this project, and how would you mitigate them? And how do you ensure your feasibility recommendations are realistic and implementable?
So we start off with that one, if I can. So Andrew, I'll answer the second part of the question.
Yeah, I'll do that
first, right? So how do we find that out, right? So we come up with solutions that ultimately may be phase solutions, because we know that if they don't go for plan A, maybe they'll go for plan B, but they'll definitely go for plan C. So we phase all that stuff. When I say we go backwards, we take that number, we brought it back. So you display to the people or the public what's needed and why is it needed and why is it important, not only for their tax base, but for the building itself and how you can make that building and structure a lot better. I don't know, maybe you want to touch on the first question they asked.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that really aids is our assessment. We call it forensics, but we do an assessment of the building where we really do know, we know the age of the boiler and the heating system, the infrastructure that keeps your building alive. We can actually put real-time numbers to that as well. So you know that the estimates are viable. And if it shows that, yeah, you're over, so let's say it comes in at the initial work, it needs to be 5 million. And then the next phase or round of work is another 5. Now we're at 10. It gives you a timeline of what you should probably address immediately, like 1 to 5 years, 5 years to 7 years, 8 years to 10, and then even maybe projected further out. But again, the way technology moves nowadays, it's compressing, but it gives you a task list that is helpful, and it gives you a number that you could work from and try and achieve over time.
Andrew touched on a couple of things. He used the word forensic and he used cost. Internal to RGB, we have John, he does our cost estimates internal, and we have forensic architects.
Yeah.
What that does is that means we can spin real fast an estimate what the problem is. We don't have to go back out to an estimator, wait for 2 weeks to get something back, because you're gonna be able to pivot, get the information, pivot around, make a decision, come up with alternate solutions. That's the key to this, ladies and gentlemen, is come up with alternate solutions, not just one solution. Because if they don't like the one solution, it doesn't pass.
Yeah. And it's not just the 3 of us or 4 of us or 5. It's a group of engineers. We have mechanical, electrical, civil site. You want to do something, we have exterior work because playground needs improvement and exterior classrooms may be potential. So we have a whole group. It's not just a small group of us that come through and assess what you have.
We make sure it gets done though.
Yeah.
Well, good done.
So I'll hopefully that answered the question.
Yes.
Heather, you want to take renovation versus long-term investment?
Love to. Okay, so how do you approach situations where a lower cost option may not be the best long-term solution? And related to that, how do you help a community understand the true trade-offs between the short-term cost and the long-term value?
Great
Yeah,
question.
great one. Yeah.
So it depends on the age group.
Yeah.
So you have 3 different age groups in a society of our typical public. You have the younger age group with the young kids that care about their school facility and how long it wants to last. I want little Johnny to not only go to school now, but to go all the way through the high school system and have a great education. Then you get the middle people where their kids are older, they're out of school, and they're worried more about their taxes and the development of what things are gonna happen in the future. And you have to appease them, and then you have the elderly, and the elderly are worried about their taxes and being taxed out of the town. So they're usually against it. So we try to look at all three and bring it down to a common denominator and bring it down to their own house. Your own house, would you let the windows go to the point where half of them don't open up? Would you let your roof go to the point where it leaks? So you have to be careful and approach it in a way where you say, I have to fix the bottom line of these things is to keep this structure, this building, basic worth something. Because if it's not worth anything, then your tax base will be worth less and your house will be worth less. So it's an investment. You throw in an investment. Just like the people you say to the elderly invested when you were younger. They invested in you and your children. And then you have to go to the younger group and say, it's not as easy as getting a big piece of a new school because everyone has to provide for it. So we'll do this thing in phases and we'll make sure your child gets an appropriate space and its appropriate size and the building won't leak and the building will work really well, both inside and out.
And Heather, we didn't talk about it, I went too fast, but one of the important conditions of producing multiple options is looking at exactly that. What's the cost now? And what's the benefit, right? So, okay, we call it band-aiding. We band-aid the building for 5 years, but that was, again, I'm making this up, $10 million. But if you put 20 million in, do I get the building lasting 30 or 40 more years, right? So there's that cost use scenario. And we also always come up with the pros and cons. So you can share the pros and cons based on this program will get you 80 years if it's new. This program might get you another 30 years out. So you'll be able to evaluate that. One of the slides we were talking about was using, for MLK, was using an alternate site and leaving the other school in place because there was no swing space. So we were looking at those options of like, keep the school online while you build new, but what's that cost going to be? What's the benefit of that? And in the end, the new school was kind of compromised because we were tight on the site. We really need the site where the existing school was. So we went through all those just sort of ruminations and options of looking at how much money should you spend and what is the end result? What's it going to give you for the next, 80 years, not 12, right?
Exactly. And lastly, you want to bring them there. You want to bring them to the school. You just don't want to give them flashy pictures. You want to walk through the school. You want to see what the school is.
Yeah.
Would you send your child to this school in this condition? So they start to see it. If they don't show up, then you go there. You go to the Council on Aging and you give a presentation there and you show them their building so they can relate to that building. And you bring it down, you sit down, you don't stand up, you sit down with them, you have a coffee with them, you talk to them back and forth. And they'll come on board because they're the same thing as we all are. We're looking for a good place, a place where we pay our taxes, where our real estate's gonna be worth some value, and more importantly, our kids go to a place that we think and believe is safe.
All right, thank you.
It's good to be able to produce that balance, to be able to show the significance of maybe it seems short money now, but it'll be short-sighted in the end, potential, right?
Great. You hit upon this a bit, but if there's anything you would like to add in terms of cost confidence. So how accurate have your feasibility level cost estimates been on past projects? And then how do you account for the market conditions and cost escalation?
You want to take that one?
Yeah,
You're pretty good.
absolutely. I live it quite a bit, actually. So feasibility cost estimates are critical because we understand that that's what all budgets are based on. It's kind of unfair to the estimator because you really don't know what you're estimating. Essentially, when I say that, you have an idea of what we're doing, but we're not specifying which window type. What kind of window you're putting in. We don't get that detail because you just don't know what it is yet. So a lot of it is based on square footage. We definitely really look at the market, where it's been over the past 6 months, a year, 3 years, and we understand what your schedule is. So we'll always put an escalation cost to that. The pandemic, if you guys, I know we all want to forget it, but the pandemic came and the escalation was insane on over those 2 years. I'd never seen anything like that. It was 0.5%, 0.75% a month almost as things are going. So we built that into your cost estimate as we went through. We also put in a contingency on the cost estimate itself to make sure that if there are things that are forgotten or there's a little bit of room for something to improve later on, that's in there. So really is looking at what you want to do, taking our best information that we have from projects that are currently under construction that we can review. We have real-time information from contractors in the area. And then we make projections based on previous months and on other things.
We also have historical blends.
Yeah.
So whenever a job goes out to bid, and we have quite a few projects in the office, whenever one goes out to bid, we put it up on a board, everyone knows what it is. Just as 2 weeks ago, Donald College came to us and they said, we have an $88 million library renovation and we've only been given $50 million. Can you RGB do this? Can you lower it down? So to answer your question, Craig, it was exactly that. We had to then take $30 million out of an $80 million project and make it work. And John did. We took it apart in systems, in components, in phases, and we were able to produce something with renderings and floor plans within a week. And with backing. Now we have to go back up into the legislature and we have to propose that. And we have to stand by it. So we do that quite frequently with clients. And they all ask the same thing. We're all in the same boat. I have this much money. I want this. How do I make that work?
Yeah. We're doing it right now. We have three schools that are renovations, 15 million, alterations, changes, 30 million, and another standalone brand new somewhere in the 85 million. And we're trying to look at, they're all for the same district, all for the same city. And the end result is, how do we make those, equitable between those three programs? And that's a challenge, right?
Without a lot of money.
Without a lot of money for stuff and quite a bit for new. So yeah, the new, everyone will be in love with the fancy new one, but how do you make the one that's more blighted with half the money or a quarter of the money just as nice or effective? So.
Big one community process, right?
I'm sorry?
Yes, we are.
Okay. The next question is, how do you approach working in communities where there may be differing viewpoints or priorities? And what strategies have you used to help communities reach consensus?
At Westport comes to my mind. Remember that?
Consensus.
That's what it was.
It's tough.
It was a bunch of, I don't want to, I'm an old man, so I'm going to say there's a bunch of grumpy old men. And they didn't like anything to do with it. Well, Andrew and I sat down with those old men. We sat across the table. I wanted to have breakfast with them. They didn't want to have breakfast with us. That's how grumpy they were. But we sat down and we understood it. And we talked back and forth. And they wanted something. At the end of the day, they were grandparents. They had kids in schools. They understood what it was. It's breaking those barriers. That's what we do well. We understand their barriers. We break the barriers. We see what they have. We talk to them. We get it approved. We make a successful project. If not, we're not successful. So there's a lot on our shoulders to make sure we do it.
And listening to the different groups and really listening to them and writing down what they're interested in, and then trying to find a way to accomplish some percentage of their desire, right?
I remember one meeting, I'm sorry to catch up, it was funny. We went to the I still call them senior centers, but they're council on ages now.
Yeah.
And all these elderly people, they see us coming in suits, are like, oh no, I don't want my taxpayers money. Well, by the end of the meeting, they all had Andrew in a circle, and they all laughing with him and whatnot. They understood it because he broke down the barrier. And that's important to do, is you want to break down that barrier. And the barrier is just not with the elder generation. It's also with that middle generation where their kids have finally gotten out of college, they're done paying bills, and they don't want to pay anymore. That's selfish thinking, and you've got to break that down for them.
One of the complexities too is the after school programs. Like, you have this school, you put this money into the school, you made it really nice, but then, you need a place for after school or after school sports. And can we use a school for those things? And we had these discussions about how maybe night programs or after school programs could be extended, maybe even run by a different group, but it's still under the care and control of your school system. but that was taken really well. Like, yeah, that would be great. Could we come in and use, could the Boys and Girls Club come in and use the basketball and the gymnasium, after school was closed, instead of just turning the key and locking and going away.
You get more bang for your buck.
You did.
Yeah.
We do that with sports fields all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, can they rent the fields out when
Right.
it's off season, or can they do it in the evening? Can they have a men and women's league or something of that nature? It's extra income, and it brings more community events into the school. So they get it's perceived as a double, as more bang for your buck. Not only do you get your school, but you also are able to extend that.
It does require both
Yeah.
involvement, right? Who's gonna run it, who's gonna management, and all those type of things, who locks it up at night, but there is that conversation that can happen, and a lot of people, if they enjoy that, that's what their approach is, you're gonna get some people to, to buy in, so. Yeah.
We can talk all night.
Yeah, no. No.
Heather, you want to take working with committee?
Yeah. No, that's okay. We appreciate that you're giving us so much details. Don't worry about the talking all night part. But working with the committee, so how do you manage situations where direction is evolving or sometimes unclear?
Oh, great question, Ken.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tyler. So how big is your committee? How many
Yeah.
people? Five?
Five?
Oh, that's great.
That's a little bit, yeah.
That's a great committee. So we've run committees that are 20 people.
Yeah, it's like, oh my lord.
And they all have their own political direction. And then what you want to do is get a core committee.
Yeah.
5 people, you got a core committee. You want to get a core committee, that core group. You want to go out to dinner, want to have a couple of drinks, you want to get to know them, you want to find out what their motives are, why they're there in that committee, why did they volunteer their time. It's understanding each other. Then once you establish that and you have your core group, then you decide what that core group can agree on, and that's what you all move forward on. When you have larger committees, there's politics take over, and they want to go this way and that way, and you typically, with the chairperson, will anoint some people. We try to get it down to a core group. That core group will make all decisions happen, and everyone goes in that same direction.
And communicating as often as possible is a really great way to know that, like you just said, it's evolving. Yes, as things are brought to you, and as you meet, it will change course. It's gonna vary, it's gonna redirect. But if we're all talking together, you're gonna come up with a more consolidated, approach. If you leave someone out, that's gonna make everyone angry, right? It's like, you're not listening to me, and no.
Yeah, so what you want to, I mean, there's reasons why your core group got together, those 5 people got together. There's a reason for that. Everyone has an agenda. It's finding that agenda. There's a mutual agenda between all parties. You could have 25 people together. They at least have one mutual direction. Once you identify that mutual, you build on that one.
Build on that.
And that's what you grow from, is that mutual. You don't grow from the differences. You grow from what's agreed upon, and you build it out that way.
What's interesting too, doing some of the work with teachers and having the superintendent involved. And what I really found over time, having students who want to have a voice in this, I've had students answer questions more appropriately and more, say, concisely than the superintendent of the. It blows me away. It's like, here's this 8th grader who has more on the ball than, that you can't say that, but you're like, wow, that was a great idea, and you have to listen to that. And I think that's fantastic to work with their input and know what they think their school should do for them and where it should go.
The last part of the question I want to address is, of the 5 people in your group, there's usually a person that has an association with different groups.
Yes.
That's why they've come to those 5. So you're already ahead of something. And we want to get to those groups as well to identify what they want and find out what their common denominator is. So that when you go to that next level, now you're starting to breach that outer circle. And that's what your goal is to do. Because the bigger the broader the circle, you get people to agree, the more buy-in you're going to get ultimately what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. So we have 4 more minutes and 2 more questions. So just keep that in mind. So how would you coordinate with ongoing or recent work? You mentioned this a bit in your presentation, but if there's anything you wanted to add, how will you coordinate with ongoing or recent work, for example, roof studies, prior analysis, to avoid duplication and ensure alignment?
Alignment with your schedule or alignment just with tasks? Just elaborate more.
I'm assuming the previous study.
Yeah, I think it's just to avoid rework and having to do everything and basically trying to pick up with all the analysis that have already been done as much as possible.
Yeah.
No,
We're
we're
doing
going through
that.
it.
So the four schools that we were talking about with Providence, it's the same. It's actually the same scenario. There was another team that did study for it, and we've actually taken that study and moved on with it. So we're actually very comfortable with it. Everyone has an opinion, but we kind of we take the information that's been given and we work with it. It's evolving, just like as you mentioned, it's ever evolving.
Yeah. At Westport, we were the third one in. They got frustrated, they finally hired us.
Yeah.
Right? So in other school committees, they do the same thing. They get frustrated to a point, but you never should lose the data that you've paid for. It's always good data. But sometimes it's opinionated based data. You gotta separate the opinionated data from real data. The real data is the facts. That's what you pay for. When you get opinion based inside the facts, it gets kind of
it gets
diluted at that point. So you gotta separate that. These are the facts. You have a window issue. That's a fact. You know, whether you want to use an aluminum curtain wall or so, whatever. You have a window problem. That's your facts. You bring it down to the lowest denominator and you focus on that. So your report that you had before is not junk at all. It's very useful.
We just go through it and pull from it, and get your take on it, right? What do you find?
And like the priority
Three more
for the
questions.
yeah.
Yeah. And we do that all the time, actually. Part of one of RIDE, the School Building Authority here in Rhode Island, is they'll set up, we call it stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so you may do a stage 1 and stage 2 as an architecture firm, but that doesn't mean you're going to go into construction or the design and construction of that building in stage 3. So many times you'll be handed off, or you'll win the contract to take someone else's work and modify it, continue it, and then build the school. So
unlike Massachusetts, where once you get to one, you go all the way through.
yeah,
Unless it doesn't pass bond.
so we do that quite a bit.
Okay, great. So the last question is, what factors could impact the timeline and how would you address delays?
Well, just sort of
Affects timeline.
I think there's a number of issues. If there's administration changes, a lot of times is an issue. Board changes because you lose that history. That tends to affect things. You can't come to an agreement in the direction you're going. As hard as we try, sometimes some people just can't get past it. We had a hard time with a field that I did recently. I mentioned a field because it was in my head. One faction wanted natural grass, another faction wanted turf. It took 6 months to figure it out. So big things of that nature.
That's where your core group comes in.
Yep.
Your core group is the judge, jury, right there. You bring those problems to them, say, okay, we gotta figure this out. Remember, the first thing that John showed you in that presentation was the schedule. You live by the schedule. If you keep to that schedule, no matter what happens, and you use that schedule for determination. So the recent projects that Andrew's talking about, it's the notorious for kicking the can.
Yeah.
But we're keeping the schedule over their head and we're moving it. So if you keep that schedule there and we all agree on a schedule, there's no reason why we can't make it. Because we'll just keep it over your head. Look, if you want to make this date, we gotta make this decision tonight. And we make that decision in the best interest.
Yeah, right. The best. It doesn't it just keeps progress moving forward. You can't stall, because if you stall, then everything stalls and you drop out of sequence, right? So
I know we're running out of time.
no. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, thank you very
Rebecca's coming in. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much for the time for the presentation as well as the thoughtful responses to our questions. We are, as you know, we have an aggressive timeline, so we'll be moving quickly to make a decision and move someone forward to reference checks and get this ball rolling. So we very much appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch soon.
One last thing I could say is that we understand your time frame, and we've got the people and the resources to make it happen. We've already assigned that. So we're ready.
Ready to
And
go.
documented.
Yeah.
Documented.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank
Good
you.
luck. Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
night.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
All right,
Bye-bye.
night.
All right, since we have a couple of minutes, I'm just going to go grab some water. I'll be back in a minute.
Doing a break.
Yep.
Hey, Chris, we're just everybody took a 2-minute break to use the restroom, but and you guys might want to rename yourselves. I think you came in with Becky's name, but
Oh yeah, let me do that.
or I can do it for you. Awesome.
I got it. I think. Maybe not.
I can do it on my side.
Oh, it's rename. I did the other thing. Jen, you'll have to rename yourself on
Yeah, I saw that there.
All right, I think we're good to go. Right, Craig?
All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So we'll have you do a presentation, and then we will follow up with some questions. So the floor is yours.
All right, great. So I'm Chris Tappe. I'm not Chris Tappe. I'm Chris Blesson from Tappe, and one of the principals, president of the company.
Jen and Cesar introduce themselves, and I'll bring up the slideshow.
Jen Littlefield, Principal and Director of Construction Administration for TAPE, and I'll be the Managing Principal on this project and the day-to-day primary contact.
I'm Cesar de Dios. I've been with TAPE for over 30 years. My current title is Technical Principal, and I work with the teams on resolving technical and constructability issues on a daily basis.
All right. So we'll launch right in. Make sure this launches. You guys seeing that okay?
Good to go.
Good. Good. Thumbs up. Great. All right. So now you know our names. We've been together for quite a while, this team, and we're all three partners of the firm, principals of the firm, and have really done a lot of elementary schools, K through 12, in the state of Massachusetts, locally. And so that's what kind of brings us together inside the firm. For your project, I think there's a lot going on right now. And obviously, on the heels of a tough vote previously, but we know that we need to jump right in and do a lot of verification of things, sort of building off of what you already did in that previous study. Couple that with educational programming and efficiently get to options development. And that's one of the big reasons why we put this particular team together. Jen and Cesar are both not fully assigned to any project right now. And so we thought we could bring our most senior people to the project to get efficient results quickly that are reliable. And so we spend less time sort of discovering some of those things and knowing from the survey you did that some of the key drivers in how the community felt when you went through the last vote, that cost is important, understanding the drivers of the cost, really diving deep on alternative options and things that are available to the schools in town with this one school. And then something that we do all the time is we talk a lot about how to keep students in place, schools online, and work around the sort of existing condition of a lot of times the non-symbiotic relationship between construction and students in school. We really have to work hard on making sure those things work and push that through communication to build and expand on the trust that you already have, but sort of make that broader and wider in every way that we can. So just regurgitating some schedule here, you've got quite a lot to do in a short amount of time. And to get to a fall town meeting, from what we're reading and all the literature, provided we can jump quickly, work with things that have already been done, get into educational programming, and then really kind of do two parallel paths of the two major categories of maintain and more of a holistic renovation plan. And so we really want to break those into two lanes and kind of study them together, which makes us efficient on the cost estimating, because we can start one while we're still doing the other, and then kind of follow up and do reports as we go into September, October, getting you towards that October deadline. And in that, we wanted to kind of highlight a couple projects recently that we're doing. This one, Walpole High School, is currently ongoing. And we studied a whole bunch of options for renovating and expanding that school in place while students are in session. And it really came up with a whole bunch of phasing options that we could shift things around, both using summer slammer scope and longer duration addition scope to swing students through the spaces. And we're currently in the final phase of that project. And it's going well for all intents and purposes. And another one Jen will tell you about here.
So in Linfield, we recently completed a simultaneous addition and renovation project at two of their elementary schools, which were carefully planned. We were improving functionality of their existing buildings and implementing upgrades to keep the buildings operational for years to come. TAPE investigated several options for reconfiguration of existing spaces and modest additions and renovations during the study phase. The complex scheduling of multiple phases at both sites allowed the schools to remain operational and safe for students and staff as construction progressed.
And then just expanding on the idea of options, I liked the terminology that was in some of the literature about strategies. And so with Burlington, one of the things we did before we ever started talking about bricks and mortar spaces, volume, space summaries, was we just talked about strategies. How can we break the building down into components that are strategies that will expand into available options? And so that produced, like, I think we ended up with 9 strategies, and then out of the 9 strategies with sub options, we presented a whole lot of options that got narrowed down, and some are not viable from the start, but we looked at them, we turned over all the stones so that the community would know exactly all the options. We didn't want to be faced at the end of the day with something that we didn't look at. And then similarly at Martha's Vineyard, we took the building and started with the bare minimum, and we kind of said, hey, if we just did a really light touch, what could we do? And we carried that through to really large, expansive touches, and sort of created a menu along the way that said, and we used previous studies for systems and things and just said, hey, here's a stepped approach. If you have a lot of money, you can do this. If you don't have as much money, you can do a little bit less. And we put that all in a report of options where they could choose from a menu of available ideas. And then recently a deferred maintenance plan with Millis, which was actually, it is in the MSBA program, and was at one point the district thought that they weren't going to be able to pass a major project. So we sort of said, well, let's just leave you with a deferred maintenance plan where we can plan it out and do a project every 2 years where we don't cross thresholds that kick the entire building into compliance at one time. We save that for the very end, but we build up to it with a whole bunch of deferred maintenance items, and we costed those out and then planned them sort of over a 10-year time frame. That project did get passed, and so we got to do everything all right now in one go.
All the options that we presented in these examples were specifically tailored to each city or town we are working with. In the early stages of our projects, we place an emphasis on getting to know our clients, taking the time to learn how the community and its leaders think and operate. We're looking forward to collaborating with you to figure out how the Neary School can continue a useful life as part of the Southborough School District. As a managing principal, I will work closely with our entire team to invest the time to understand your concerns and goals so that when we present options, they're clear, connected, and transparent. That clarity allows the decision makers to move forward with confidence, knowing the chosen path is financially responsible and educationally sound. Managing schedules and costs will be a key part of my role. Through educational programming, we understand your goals and will work to balance those with the necessary performance and operational improvements to the building. We'll focus on coming in or under budget on every milestone throughout the project, always verifying with estimators as changes are made to the design. We plan ahead of time to ensure we don't affect the quality and functionality of your building and that your educational plan is never compromised. Finishes upgrades and new furniture selections can go a long way towards making older buildings feel refreshed and ready for a next generation of students and teaching methods, while keeping the overall building architecture the same and minimizing the capital investment. As you can see here in our Saugus Belmont Monte School renovation, the relatively low-cost improvements like paint, flooring, ceilings, and graphics can have a high impact on how existing spaces can be transformed into a fresh new environment. Chris will share a little more on how graphics have become an integral part of our designs.
So one thing we wanted to highlight was the interior environmental graphics packages that we do in-house with designers on our team, and that really just infuses new life. What we like to kind of show these as low cost, big impact improvements that can turn existing spaces into quite different types of spaces once you do it. But it really just applies to the sort of surface treatment, and then you can spend the big dollars making the big impacts down, in other parts of the building where you need to move walls and doors per se. But to talk a little bit more about those technical components, I'll turn over to Cesar.
Thank you. Our process for assessing existing buildings is to create a roadmap based on a series of steps. The first step is to do a general evaluation of the facility by using the materials that are available, documentation, plans, plus visit extent of the building, and we ask ourselves questions. Does the facility have good bonds that we can work with? Or does the facility pose particular challenges? We weigh the pros and cons of these different things that we observe, and if if we're leaning more towards the pros, then we move to the next step, which is to evaluate for core requirements, meaning the building code, all the different codes that we need to comply with. Building code being one of them, but also life safety, health, energy codes, accessibility, ADA, MAB, and any other regulations such as conservation, for example, wetlands, Rivers Act, etc. Once we determine that, what is required for code compliance, we move to the next step, step number 3, that we look at what other additional upgrades we can incorporate to enhance the learning environment and bring comfort to the building occupants. Improve natural light, improve ventilation systems and graphics, of course, to create an atmosphere inside the building that is appealing, engaging. So we do all those things in the evaluation phase. Finally, we composed, on step 4, we composed summary of findings and recommendations, listing all the required and desired upgrades. These items get prioritized using a criteria, trying to optimize it from a cost-benefit perspective.
One thing we don't want to leave out on the technical side is the proficiency around wetlands. We've worked with the same engineer we proposed on this project, Niche, to work with and around wetlands very closely. We're just showing this project that was wetlands on 3 different sides. We know that the Neary site has a large chunk of wetland constraints on it. And so if the building was going to expand or change on the outside of the envelope at all, we need to really be conscious of that. And we've got the team ready to do that for you, all the way from wetlands flagging to survey to designing around that, and with conservation and DP as needed. The community engagement process is big. We actually see the entire process of design a community engagement activity. We want to make sure that the community can see themselves in the building. And so we usually refer to that as like a storytelling, where we really have to invest the time to know what the story is of this building and how people can see themselves in it. Work in finding all the pathways of communication, which is multifaceted. We saw that in the survey report, where folks are getting information from all kinds of sources, and some of it's right, some of it's not right. And we need to try to engage in that in multiple different ways. We've created tax calculators on our partners' websites, and we've done storytelling. We've done graphics like these that can help tell the story of what the value is of existing facilities. So one of the concerns could be folks wanted a new building, some of them did, and they don't see the value of an existing building. And so we need to really kind of communicate around that for both of the options talked about in the RFS. And so that's a quick fly of our of what we're trying to propose and bring to the table. And we obviously are here to answer any other questions you have. So I think we'll try to turn it over to you now.
All right. Thank you so much. So in terms of our questions, so what distinguishes your firm from others for this project, and why are you the right partner for a community that has already gone through a challenging and unsuccessful process?
I'd say first and foremost is that when we saw this project come up, Jen and Cesar are both coming off of some extended rest time from other projects that ended, and so they're like really ready to get, like, they're not overwhelmed, so they're fresh, I guess is the first word. Second of all, we've done this before. The Tisbury Elementary School on Martha's Vineyard actually failed its vote for probably some similar reasons that you experienced, and then we came in and did a renovation addition project to that school, which was successful, that they funded on their own completely. And we were able to kind of come in and bring the community together around that. I think that's one of the challenges here. And so I would kind of summarize that answer to the efficiency of a very senior experienced team that's worked together can move quickly and help you make decisions as fast as you can. We've got a lot of, say, horsepower, if you will, around the community engagement, graphics, all of that stuff. We've got a dedicated graphics team that just does that. We've got people that are not architects focused on communication and graphics and community stuff. And then we've got the experience with other projects similar to this experience ready to engage on that. So I think all of that combines to what we think is the right choice.
I'll do the next one. What are the biggest risks you see in this project and how would you mitigate them? And on top of that, how do you ensure your feasibility recommendations are realistic and implementable?
Ensuring that they're realistic and implementable is like just kind of a hallmark of what we do. I mean, we're not study architects. We don't do stuff to like theoretically study projects and not see them actually get fulfilled. And so we do studies because that is the first step, right? But we want to do them in a way that's realizable. And the depth of experience over the entire history of the firm is we've all been brought up in that tradition of like, don't just do it for theory, do it for real, so that the towns can use that investment, whether it's now or whenever they get the money and funding, that they have that ability to do that. I'll be honest, I think one of the biggest challenges or risks that you have right now is frankly the schedule. That it's such a tight schedule that we can do as professionals. But given the community sentiment, which we don't know fully yet, but we tried to research and understand what happened with the vote previously. A project that moves very fast with a significant portion of that over a summer when people get more disengaged and less there presents a very big risk on being transparent and making sure people don't miss big chunks of a quick process. And so I think that whatever happens in this study, I think an over communication and like really helping people dial in is going to be as important as the options that come forward. Just because if you have the world's best option, but nobody knows why, it's not going to pass. And so I think that as I've studied all of the stuff available to us, it just feels like achievable, but it just feels like a mitigating risk is going to be in that sort of moving efficiently, but keeping the community up with you, which communities don't always move super fast. So.
All right, so then on to renovation versus long-term investments. So how do you approach situations where a lower cost option may not be the best long-term solution? And with that, how do you help a community understand the true trade-offs between short-term cost and long-term value?
Yeah. So on the Burlington project, we ran into a scenario where the mantra that that we came up with, and this is tangential to your question, doesn't fully get there, and I'll get there in a second. But the reality was that we kept saying there's this dilemma of what the best project is, and then what the capacity of the town to fund is. And so we had to start calibrating something in that regard of saying the best project, which is, let's just say a new school or something like that, that can really solve all of the issues that you're experiencing in a building for the long term, isn't necessarily the project that the town can support or fund, whether it's financial or the sort of community vote. And so we really tried to help people understand the value proposition. And so understanding the value of a project doesn't always mean the least expensive option is the best value. And it also doesn't mean the one that solves the most problems brings the best value, because you may be able to get more value out of something that maybe solves a little bit fewer problems, but is something you can fund and move forward with, because at the end of the day, maybe a little bit lesser reach on a project actually gets something done than stalling and having a failed vote that gets nothing done, right? And that isn't progress. And so I think we have to gauge what's best and right, and that ends up becoming the right project, I think, at the end of the day. And value kind of isn't necessarily defined by the cost, the dollar signs, right? Value is a whole bunch of other things involved in that. And so part of that is, like we said before, communicating the value of existing buildings, which I inherently think there's a bunch of value in a lot of buildings. There's some that aren't, but I think we'll find a lot of good stuff about the building that we can recreate and push new ideas into. And it may be, okay, that's going to be too far. Maybe we pull back and say, well, we can get similar results by doing graphics and FF&E, and then we can push more of the capital money into other things that really kind of just get strategic about where we spend dollars and how that gets deployed, that comes up with the actual right project for Southborough. So I don't know, did that get there? Hopefully.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I think just kind of continuing on this process in terms of cost confidence. So how accurate have your feasibility level cost estimates been on past projects? And how do you account for market conditions and cost escalation?
Sure. So let me see if this graphic, that I think they took it out of the slideshow, but there we have we use our partner cost estimators, PM&C, and they do a lot of the school projects in the state, have really good handle on data, and a lot of data to support their cost estimates. So starting there, I have a high degree of confidence with our cost estimator, but then it boils down to how we communicate the scope to them at an early phase like this, where you've got a lot of contingencies applied and things like that. And so our documentation process, and I'll give you the picture from the end and how it portrays out, is that our sort of average change order percentage on projects is typically less than 1% at the end. And usually what's happening from the first feasibility study estimate through bid is that you have these design and pricing contingencies early on. It's like 12 or 15%, and then it kind of drops as you get further down the step. So some project teams their estimate will stay, everybody's joyful if the number stays flat all the way through, but that means you missed scope early on, right? Because you're taking that design and pricing contingency, putting it into the total value. And so the number stays flat, but the design and pricing contingency comes down, which just means you didn't show things or didn't know things early. Historically, our projects, with the exception of some COVID years when things went really crazy and it was hard to pinpoint some things, but they usually are coming down, which means we're getting the estimates right early. And then as we put more and more detail into it, those design and pricing contingencies are coming down, which allows that total number to kind of trend lower than what we showed at feasibility. And then at the end of the projects, when we build total project budgets around those numbers, as you know, with MSBA, you have to pin the full total project on a feasibility study, schematic design number, and then you design to that at the end. We're giving back towns, well into the six figures of dollars on the fund that they passed at town meeting and the ballot. And on recent projects, we had one that we were able to turn back like $16 million under total project value. So that cost conscious sort of, don't show you things that we don't think are going to make it, because then people are disappointed, when you have to value engineer. it's a pain. We don't want to value engineer. We want to just get it right the first time. And I think that's our philosophy. And, you know, it's not perfect every time, but that's what drives us to kind of keep things on track.
And Chris, we used PM&C for the initial project, and I think it was
Okay.
Peter Bradley was his name. I think the guy was a cost estimator. If you ever worked with him.
Yep. He's the boss over there, so he's good. Did you have a good experience with them? Hopefully, you feel like.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit through. You know, we don't necessarily deal too much directly with them, but you know, I got very comfortable with multiple long page reports. The next, so for community process, how do you approach working in communities where there may be differing viewpoints and priorities? And what strategies have you used to help communities reach consensus? And I think you elaborated a lot of this about your community outreach engagement, but
yeah. So differing viewpoints is tricky. I think what we want to do. It sounds weird, but I think if we can start with people understanding the need, you know, and it's like ultimately what I've found is that some people will vote no, and you know they're not going to want to support something because of their finances, their individual finances, whatever that is. But what I try to do is encourage people to understand it's okay to vote no because of your finances. But tell me what you think about the merit of the school. Tell me what you think about the merit of the project, because then we can have a real conversation that has been effective in other places where those people can talk with their spheres of influence and say, look, I'm voting no because I have I'm on fixed income, I have certain financial constraints, but I actually think it's a good solution, right? And that allows people to evaluate it on their own in the sense of like, it's not just a no because like I'm not veiling the no on I don't like it and therefore causing misinformation or things like finding reasons to make the no because I don't like it, which a lot of people don't feel comfortable saying no to something because they're financially constrained. And so they find those reasons to say no, but we try to get people to open up a little bit about that and say, it's okay. Like that's totally viable. And we want to respect that. Any no we respect, but we also want to understand why so that we can put truth into it. And I think that's our goal, is to really kind of speak truth where we can. Building consensus is it's a long, hard process. I think in the day and age of social media where people can sit behind computers and throw really nasty things out there, you kind of have to have thick skin too, and understand the environment. And so we'll do a lot of that work. I think that's one of the things we said is that you got to invest the time, you got to find the right story. And that kind of comes out in the process. Yeah, I think when people feel like they're heard, you get a lot more dialogue and open honesty around the project. That's real. And I think that gets you pretty far.
All right, thank you. So then continuing on sort of with the communities, but working with people. So working with the committee in particular, how do you manage situations where direction is evolving or in some cases unclear?
I guess it's a challenge. I think that I think we want to what we'll do, and I think Jen does this well, and you'll spend a lot of time with Jen on this process, is that we want to make sure that we repeat and clarify. And I think if we're unsure of what we're hearing from you all on a committee level, I think we want to just clarify, just take a pause and say, hey, we think we're hearing this. Is that what we're hearing, or is that not what we're hearing? And we can engage on that. We usually have a direct interface with like a building committee chair or someone who's sort of like leading the meetings, and those people typically have a little bit more voice that carries weight. But I think it happens a lot, and we're happy to also entertain multiple different viewpoints. And like if someone feels a certain way and wants us to turn over another rock, but no one else does, like we shouldn't shut them out, I think. And I think we should listen to what those are. And maybe it's just a conversation, or maybe it is a little bit more work. But I think it just involves kind of slowing down and asking for clarity. And then being thoughtful about Jen actually does this way better than I've seen, like than I do, but like the copious note taking that people can see what we're hearing and transcribing from things, sending that back to you all fresh after a meeting so that you can be like, that's not quite what I heard, or yeah, I heard it the same way. So every step we make is kind of documented and seen, is another way to do that. And I think that's also helpful when you get say 6 months from now, and someone's like, I don't remember why we decided that. Then you can look back at the record and say, well, here's the sort of clear path for why we went a certain direction. And so that's beyond the sort of committee meeting level minutes. That's like us regurgitating sort of a more internal process to you guys and showing that transparently. And I think that's probably helpful too. But it is a process. We're all humans, so we're going to misinterpret. There's going to be moments of like, various feelings in different ways. And I think understanding that and respecting it, and just having as much open dialogue and conversation as possible, as humans, that's going to be the best path forward.
All right, thank you. So just in terms of time, we have 2 more questions and about a little more than 5 minutes to go, so 7 minutes or so. So in terms of coordination and efficiency, how will you coordinate with ongoing or recent work? So for example, roof studies and prior analysis to avoid duplication and ensure alignment.
So we did that on the Walpole High School. Actually, they had their roof blow off in a storm when we were like 30% down the road in design. And so we needed to incorporate the complications of an insurance claim into the documents. We ended up folding that work into our own as well. But I think, you may have another team doing the roof of this project. I don't know the details of that quite yet, but I think TAPE works in harmony with all of the contractors and other architecture firms, like sharing files, stuff like that. Is, if we, at the end of the day, we all want to succeed. So I think the answer is work in harmony, play in the sandbox nicely, provide information, and coordinate in detail. So like if we know, at this stage, it's like hard to know what the project, if any, would be. But if we know you're going to put a roof on next summer or something, and we think there's potential for something, I might talk to the team who's doing the roof and say, can we just get some blocking points in these areas, because it would open up options for them later, and that's not super expensive if you get it in now. But if we have to go cut the roof up later and repatch and repair, it makes it
hard. The roof's like July.
But like coming up July. Yeah. So there can be conversations early too, to say like, hey, like, walls can only move in certain ways or something like that. But and then being sensitive of your investment, right? We don't want to waste your money. So I don't want to go and rip new roofs off and put new roofs down again. And so we would take those as an existing condition that is a sort of non-negotiable. Only if absolutely needed break glass, so I could probably say more, but I think you've got a couple more minutes here.
Just to add very quickly, with the scenario described with working with other trades, we always do during construction. We actually have meetings with the commissioning agents on a project for envelope-related issues, where all the consultants, the engineers, and as well as the different trades, roofing included, meet, and we all kind of brainstorm about how we're going to put this together, who's coming first, who's coming second, and leave me a little bit of strip of roofing so I can tie this membrane into that. So it gets coordinated in a sort of a conference with all the parties that are involved in that aspect. And something similar could occur here. Is a matter of discussion with the designer, the detailer of the roof, as well as the installer, the roofer. And we have experience with that.
Perfect. The last question is, what factors could impact the timeline and how would you address delays?
So one thing that also may make us a little slightly different than some other firms is like we're signing on for the project, right? So I'm not going to tell you that you only get 5 hours or you get, 2 meetings or whatever. Like we're here to get you through this, right? And so I think delays are sometimes just a part of the process. And so we're really flexible on that. I do not like to ask for additional services on these things because you don't like doing it. I don't like asking for it. It's just a bad taste in everybody's mouth. So we want to agree on the price. Hopefully we can do it efficiently without delays, but sometimes it happens. And you guys can't foresee some things that happen on your side. Maybe we'll discover something that warrants, a little bit more time to uncover and discover. And we'll bring that to your attention so that you really know. And we may make a recommendation that we should slow down a little step and really analyze this and keep ahead of it so that it doesn't bite you later. And those are the big risky scope items that we want to make sure this could have a real big swing on scope or price one way or the other, and we don't know it. And so we should bring that up now. And so I think maybe the short answer to that is to anticipate delays might come, but work efficiently so that we minimize them if they need to happen or minimize them along the way. So minimize the chances.
All right. So that does it for our follow-up questions. Very much appreciate your presentation as well as the thoughtful responses. So as you know, we have a very aggressive timeline. So we will be deliberating and making our decisions as soon as possible to then move group forward for reference checks and then get the show on the road. As we move forward. So again, thank you for your time, and we'll be in touch soon.
All right. Well, good luck. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Goodbye.
See you.
Night.
Bye.
Ooh. All right. So I don't know about you, Craig and Heather. No, that's fine. Craig, I was kind of doing scores on the fly. I don't know if you were as well.
I haven't officially scored, just taken a lot of notes.
Okay.
But I can kind of go through and do it as we go.
Yeah, I can kind of walk through my thoughts if we want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have some notes here. Some was a little bit more intuitive. And then if you guys just want to score it on the fly, and then we can or just if we have them ranked? We would just why don't we just do that to start?
Sorry, guys. I am attempting to get my two children who have escaped from bed.
Sorry, Daddy wants you in bed. He's gonna come up in a minute.
There we go. So I just need like 60 seconds to
That's
locate
right. Take your time.
Spencer and get
Take
them
your time.
back in bed.
I
You
just
do
did the
that.
same.
Take your time.
We've been there, done that.
Yep.
Craig, well, do you want to move forward public comment to see if anybody has any input from the public while we're kind of debating?
That sounds like a good plan.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that has any public comment or food for thought that they want to share with us? All right. We'll keep the other one too, just at the end. I think that makes sense. I thought we did good. We got it. We were efficient.
Yeah. Kept right on schedule.
Mark, anything on your side that we need to note at this point, or are you good?
No, I'm good. Just wait to see where you end up, and then if need to call a special meeting of the select board to approve or any recommendation to proceed to contract negotiations with a firm.
Okay.
Okay. So sorry about that. Where are
Oh.
we?
No
So yeah,
worries.
we while you were gone, we just asked the public if they had any comments. We didn't have any. We just checked with Mark if we're doing good on everything, which we are. And then I had the Excel spreadsheet open, so I was kind of scoring as we went. But my suggestion is like, I have a 1, 2, 3. Maybe you guys have a 1, 2, 3, and we could just see where we sync up in terms of that. And then we still need to do the scoring, but we can kind of if we all have the same one, then I think it's kind of an easy conversation.
Say we could go 1, 2, 3, say you're number 1 at the same time. See what we have.
Yeah, why don't we go? Let me start the table here. You want to? Does each one of us want to start with their first, or do they want each one to rattle off their 1, 2, 3?
Maybe hear ones first. I would love to hear you guys.
Okay.
I'm processing. I guess I'm still there.
Yeah. I mean, I scored them, and I think I did a pretty good job. So I had Tap A, which I think we officially as the number 1 with about 79 points. And I'm a little hard grader. I don't give anybody perfect scores, basically. Then Arrow Street around 72, and then RGB around 60. And then, if we want to go into it, I have good, I think, kind of justifications and thoughts around each one of those if we want to get into that depth. But let's see how we do on the.
I have to tabulate. I was scoring, but on my little hard sheet paper as I was going, so I don't have them fully tabulated. But in with the rough numbers, my number 1 was RGB, and then Arrow Street, and then Tap A.
Mm.
Okay.
So without the official scoring, but more so in the place of just in what I was thinking in terms of questions, I think where for me, I found strengths in each, but then I struggled to find like a one. I did like a one consensus leader at this moment. So I'm going to talk like in terms of where I thought looking at things in terms of for Tape, I thought that there were real strengths in terms of the fact that we have, the firm fit process of having them having two people who were chomping at the bit, ready to go, ready to run. They clearly did their homework on where things went, where things went wrong, and trying to gather that information. And they had a very, I thought, Andrew, you probably appreciated the wetlands note.
The wetlands was good. To be honest, the biggest differentiator for them was, in my mind, was their community engagement. The fact that they have dedicated design and communicate, like that card, like also the fact that he did his own, public accessibility, public TV show with the town and kind of have done all the communications. That's something I think we were really lacking on the project. Like the tax calculator, myself and Tim Litt had to build it, right? That what ourselves, like our consultants never even offered. Like there wasn't really any marketing that was done by them. I mean, maybe they helped with like a couple page presentation that we're using slides, but I think that was one that it really differentiated them. Arrow Street, again, I think we know what we're getting there. I do think they did a really good job. Larry was good and responsive. Like when we changed the design of like moving the school, they turned that around very fast. And they have a deep bench of people. RGB, I was higher on RGB before, and I'm much less now. I didn't realize that they really don't do much in Massachusetts. Like out of the last 75 elementary schools, they haven't worked that did an MSBA project. They haven't worked on any of them. So it's one of those, like, I think they're really focused on kind of that small project. Like they really focus on 15 million. They're not focused on that other option, right? I think they're saying, their strategy of like, well, we work within our budget and we'll have, we give you options for phasing in the future is half of it, but I think they're missing that kind of like bang for the buck. What if we want to spend more? What if we want to do a little bit more? I'm sure they can do it. It just didn't seem like that was their strategy at much. Like the working backwards, I think is not exact. I mean, I kind of think we're going to work, the other direction, and then just have enough data that we see if we can value engineer it down to a 15 versus like sticking at a 15 and figuring out what can we get for 15. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I appreciated about RGB is they were by far the most detailed. I felt like their project was the meatiest for every question. They also had clearly paid attention to what we were asking them to pay attention to. But I didn't feel like any of them were like knock out of the park easily the best in every possible sort of like question and situation. But I did appreciate that they were able to provide like examples that they've done, practices that they have, and strategies for pretty much every single thing that we were looking for. I actually like the backwards sort of design approach to it. I will say that's probably influenced by the fact that as an educator, that's the best way to design your lessons and everything is you need to look at the end goal and then you have to build it from there. And I do think that actually does I especially since we are up against some like we don't have an endless budget, right? And so yes, there's value to saying, well, let's design something that meets a bunch of goals and see if it works. But it's kind of, I feel like, what happened before, and now we're in a much tighter spot with that. So I kind of appreciate their mindset of, there's flexibility for growth. But they're going to work within the guardrails that they're given, as opposed to kind of like build the guardrails as it goes. Um,
Yeah, I think my concern too is if we do a larger project, even 40, 50, 60 million, whatever it is, I think the town needs to apply for MSBA again. And I would like to have a firm that we can continue as either an OPM or a designer into that phase. And I don't know if they've done or have the experience doing any MSBA, that I would value that.
If they had that experience, like if we followed up and essentially were able to get that data, would that impact your opinion on working with them?
I mean, in terms of an elementary school, I know they don't have it because I have the history going back to 2012. So they have not been the designer or an OPM or a cost estimator on any MSBA elementary school project since 2012. There's 75 different schools. Tappe has like 3, and I think Arrow Street has like 10 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
That
Arrow
was
Street
just
sounded
one.
really excited about not working with MSBA, but
Well, that's the thing, is I think that's because RGB actually pulled the estimate, or not the estimate, the proposal for OPM when we did the first project, but they never returned it. So I think they just, that's not, and they kind of mentioned that's not what they're interested in. They want something that's failed MSBA and they can get in there and just kind of do something smaller or something more like tactical or whatever, and get it over the finish line, which is what you just part of what we're looking for here. I'm kind of just missing that other piece that's like maybe a larger project that could be an MSBA, but it's like a 2-grade school versus a 4-grade school. Again, a renovation versus a new, but it's just a little bit more larger in scope than I think they might usually deal with, or at least they seem to be. All their slides had to do with the Rhode Island Department of Education slides, like all like the templates they showed were the Rhode Island ones. So my worry is that and they talked a lot about Rhode Island, the schools in Rhode Island. So I'm a little worried that they're more focused on Rhode Island and not as much on Massachusetts. But that was one of my only big concerns there.
Yeah, I felt like RGB was a good. I feel like when they would come in and get something across the line, and is it necessarily what we're looking for? That I don't know. I feel like that they gave those stories of, this was the third failed vote or the fourth failed vote, and we came in and and I wonder about their communication style. I wonder if it gets it might work with what demographics is it going to be the most effective, and is that what we're looking for, to get this vote across, is one of the questions that I have. Like, I felt like they brought up the grumpy old men that they bring in, and so could they use that tactic and get something across the line, but is it really something that we're um, aiming for? I thought, whereas like Tappe brought they talked about, was it the Millis situation where it looked like it was going to be phased, and they brought that, they were able to bring that forward, and then
That was
actually
that deferred maintenance plan with the not hitting the thresholds. I thought that was kind of an interesting concept too.
yeah, and then they ended
that's
up
kind of where like the for me, like when reason I joined this is I want as much bang for the buck. If it costs more or it's a little bit longer, like a deferred maintenance plan, but you're going to get there in phases, and the phasing works. I can be convinced to spend a little more money if you're going to get more longevity, bang for the buck. But yeah, I did like that part of theirs. I did like the fact that they were basically giving us partners for non-partner. Like, I mean, you're going to have a partner that's going to be doing basically project management, which is good.
in terms of the one that ended up, they were, there was a deferred option and then it went for the whole thing. Maybe I just missed it, but I wasn't clear on necessarily why or how the town. Like I'm not clear on if what Tape's role was in getting the town to go for essentially the bigger project, um, versus the other one. Did you guys catch, like, was that actually something we can credit to them, or is that just like the town just something else was the factor?
I don't know on the Millis one, did they get them to convince to do the big project all at once? I thought they did the staged over whatever 10 years it was, or the horizon, wasn't it? Unless my notes are wrong. And then it was like at the very end, then it would trip the codes, and that was where they would do the bigger part of the project. I could be wrong. I did like that they use PMNC as their cost estimator too, at least as the one that had to dig into the numbers and and do all the calculations in the spreadsheets. I'm comfortable with how they presented them, so that was just being a little selfish, not having to learn another estimator's language and how they lay out their files.
I do have some concerns. Yeah, that's definitely a benefit. I do have some concerns about Tape in their communication style. It was nice to hear that they do have obviously in-house communication. We didn't see a ton in terms of examples of it, but at least we know that they don't just go with whatever someone else says. But if this team that was on the call tonight is the primary team that communicates with people, look, it's 8:30 p.m. It's the end of a long day. Those factors can be there. But I, if I were an outside person, I would not say that this was a particularly effectively well communicated presentation. One person was just reading off of a script. Every time she spoke was read off of a script. And uh, I actually, what was the main guy's name?
Chris.
Chris. Um, he was more authentic, but I would not say that he was someone that I came away being like, wow, yeah, no, like I feel good about this, or like you did a good job explaining that, or like that totally makes so much more sense. And we're going to be under an intense public scrutiny eye. And the Arrow Street got a little bit knocked around for their communication approach with the town last time for different reasons. It was more like came off as a little bit know-it-all and arrogant as opposed to not communicating certain things, but I would be concerned about the way that the Tap A team can actually communicate with the town.
I thought it was interesting, yeah, Heather, to build on that a little bit. I thought it was interesting how when we asked questions, it was only one person essentially who answered. The and
I mean, what's his name? Cesar, I think, answered a couple technical things, but
yeah,
Yeah, he popped in.
he popped in.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and I can't remember. It was a Jen. Was that
Jen, yeah.
Jen?
Yeah, like who read off a script and then did not answer a single on the fly question.
Which
And
I mean, I mean, I would agree. I don't know if she was comfortable doing it, but I mean, that was like the other. I think it was RGB where it was the two principals were basically the ones that mostly talked. I mean, they might have a setup where it's like, I'm the lead. I answer the questions kind of thing. But I mean, the reading off the script was a little bit
obvious.
Yeah. And again, they might have just, it's late, it's the end of the day. They will give them a grain of salt, but I think if this is sort of like the pinnacle of their presentation and communication style, they'd get eaten alive by the town groups that will be asking them questions and then going on and responding and judging afterwards.
but and that's where I think, but like I think looking at like their examples of things, like Chris was the one that was on like the TV station doing the questions, and I think so. I think he's more the communications guy, and she might be more the note taking kind of project manager.
Copious note taker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which you need people with different roles. That's kind of what in my head I saw it differentiated, which can work. But yeah, I definitely see that the skill set, different skill sets, put it that way.
Yeah. I don't know. And I don't want to, it's like, we don't have to harp just on this, but I mean, if he has TV experience and all of that, he was not very smooth and clear and easy to understand with like the off the cuff questions.
I disagree. I thought he was the best. I thought he was the best of anyone. I feel like I was able to get out of him much better quotes on my notes.
I think he got to pieces, but again, if I'm just putting myself into the seat of like I'm a townsperson coming and trying to understand things, the I think that he would struggle to get his point across if it was this way. But more, we have more to consider than just the communication approach. But I'm just trying to think from like different hats.
Yeah. Craig, what was your ranking? I don't think we ever put it in the thing.
Oh, that's true. He asked to go last, and then he didn't give it.
And then I hadn't given it.
He copped out. He copped out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, you guys were gonna follow up on that?
Yeah.
I what I feel like what we would get. I think I was disappointed after, especially I feel like after RGB and Tepe, I feel like I was disappointed by Arrow Street in the fact that I don't think they had an opportunity to really say like, okay, so this is what happened, this is where we're gonna go, and we're gonna try to make a difference this time. And like it almost took to like the last line of him saying like we spent a lot of time and we're invested in Southborough, but I didn't feel it like through the presentation necessarily.
Yeah, they weren't like, this is what we did wrong and we're going to do different this time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And maybe that's context, Heather, to the point where you brought up about how there was the feedback that maybe they came off as a little know-it-all, maybe they and so um and I didn't get a know-it-all sense from them, but at the same token, like I don't know, I don't think that there was anything that Arrow Street brings to the table that Tepe wouldn't bring to the table. Um and I felt like they really Tepe took the steps to kind of
Yeah, I think,
address this is what we would do.
and I think Arrow Street. I mean, Arrow Street obviously is the heir apparent, so they have the knowledge and the history. But I feel that Tape, they did come. I think almost had more homework done than Arrow Street. But I think they would, and I think they had the time and the seniority to be able to digest where we're at and kind of hit the ground running. Um, so I thought that was at least one of my takeaways there. But yeah, I think
Mhm.
I did see that the humbling of Arrow Street to say we didn't get this over the finish line. We have unfinished business. I want to personally, I want to get this done. As opposed to like we've
Mhm.
invested a lot. I want to try to get some more money out of this.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
felt a little bit like they were kind of riding their own coattails.
Which
Yeah.
is what people do, and that some people do in that situation.
Hmm.
So I would say I would rank Tepe over Arrow Street. Where I struggle, I think, is I feel like if we wanted to just get something done, RGB would be who I move forward.
Yeah. I'd
But
agree. If we were just going to do the $15 million, like we just need to do a code upgrade and do minimal maintenance and come up with a deferred maintenance plan. I mean, that's where where we started this years ago, right? We had the $6 million quote for the roof and all the other deferred maintenance, and that's where we started the project of, well, do we spend another $6 million on this building, or do we look to do something differently? But yeah, I don't know.
and then yeah, and they might, as I said, they might get it done for 13. But it, I don't necessarily see a vision of a school in their presentation. Um, and a vision of a place of like a true community center, which I think, is where I still want this to go, you know? So I think I think that's where I'm stuck is that I would, in my mind, I'm eliminating, like, I don't think Arrow Street. I think it's either Taipei or
Yeah,
RGB.
I'd say none of us have Arrow Street as their number one,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think we can, you know,
Greg, you mentioned that you didn't get the feel that RGB was sort of seeing like the bigger sort of community center use creative stuff. I do agree that it did seem they did seem to lean in their presentation a little more on like the option two kind of line of things. I did latch on a little bit to they repeated a few times like they really specialize in challenges and kind of meeting whatever the challenges are. So to me, that's sort of like, okay, well, we kind of have two challenges and
Mhm.
so they can meet or work with either of those. But they did talk at one point. I literally wrote a bullet point like community use,
Yep.
community options as some
Yep.
of the stuff that they talked
yeah.
through. Because I think what there was a school that got like closed or
I think
whatever,
they
and it
had
was
like
like, how do we
some
rethink
town
this? And
offices and some other
yeah,
stuff
and
that kind of were
then
able
and
to
they
do
were
it.
talking about, I think two of the presentations addressed things like different uses for programs in the gym and renting stuff out and stuff like that. And they were the one of the ones that talked about that. So, oh.
Yeah, and I guess yeah, as I was saying, I remember them talking about like using the fields for a men's or women's league. And it
Hmm.
and and so that, yes, but then I think of like, I don't know, and maybe it is just the seeing some of the images of the mock-ups of what they could Taipei could hypothetically turn a Neary into with some of the renovations. I felt like was intriguing to me.
And the men's and women's leagues. I mean, all the stuff that they talked about doing from kind of like that, because that was part of like the community outreach. How do you sell this? It's like we did that. Like we went to Southborough youth basketball and tried to get them to even take a board vote, and that didn't happen, right? I mean, we went to Dull Men's Club and sat down with the old people, like, and that still didn't like. There was nothing new that I saw from them from any of the marketing or community outreach thing. It's like we kind of did that and it didn't work. Not, I mean, they might be more successful, but I'm not so sure. I mean, I think if we came to the Dull Men's Club or the Senior Center with a $15 million project and could stand behind it and say that this is the best interest of the schools, we could probably get it accomplished. But I don't know in the end if that's what's in the best interest of the long term of the town.
Yeah, I feel like one of the tough things with comparing RGB to Taipei in terms of like, at least where I'm struggling with final decision making is I I feel like, RGB they talked more. They gave more detail. And so I feel like I have a better understanding of their ideas and their concepts and their approaches. Even if it's something like, yeah, we did coffees and we talked to the old men's club, I at least have an idea of things they're thinking about. And they said a few times, it's like they want to listen closely to the community and to the people and make adjustments and pivot from there. Taipei has some like good examples, and it's nice that they've worked with wetlands and things like that. I feel like because there wasn't as much detail that came out, I'm going, okay, but like, what are some of your ideas for like how to convince the public? Or like, really, how do you really get it done as opposed to more the concepts that he addressed? I feel like he just stayed more surfacey.
I think that was more in the presentation. I mean, they had like that, video slideshow that kind of showed like both versions of it. They had that cool card with the 3D thing. They had the going on the TV show. They
Yeah, the
had,
cards were cool.
that
Yeah.
was kind of cool. I was like, oh, that was a good idea. We should
Yeah.
we should have done those.
Mhm. Mhm.
The tax calculator, honestly, like I did see other OPMs and designers that did that, and the fact that they do it, that was a lot of time and effort, especially on Mr. Litt's part to build.
Hmm.
That they think about that stuff ahead of time. I think that's where we stumbled. I think our design was fine. I think we stumbled in the marketing communications and the buy-in and selling the story, and I would have loved to ask him what is his approach to social media. Like, do you police the, town Facebook group
Right.
to
You
offer
you post
comments
it.
and fact check and that kind of thing? Like, I had to do that, so I would love somebody else to do that.
That's
But
a
yeah,
tough job.
yeah, that was a tough job.
I mean, well, question, are we allowed in this process, like, are we allowed to reach out with some follow-up questions? Like, can you send us examples of your community outreach and your communications, like, or do we have to go with what just came from these verbal interviews?
I would mark if we ask the same follow-up to everyone, is that acceptable? Or
Yeah, I think if you're going to do follow-up, I think as long as you're asking everybody, the same things, then I think you're good.
okay.
I wonder if maybe that's
Yeah,
the
I mean,
approach.
that could be the approach, but I think I would really only personally be choosing between Tape and Arrow Street, and I kind of know what Arrow Street does.
So you're Tape Error Street. I think I'm Tape RGB. Craig, are you? What are you?
I'm Tape RGB, but I'm leaning. I think I'm leaning more in terms of like what I would want to get out of this. I think Tape can bring us beyond the 15 million. Like I think they could bring us the 15 million option, but they could also bring us something better. Um, so I think I'm leaning Tape. Um, I I'm not sure. I think RGB might pigeonhole us to that 15 million option.
But if you guys both like RGB, we didn't really see any examples of their marketing or collateral or what they do. They basically just spoke to the going to talk to the old people, but maybe they have stuff they just didn't mention if we want to reach out to them. But that was my only.
I use, yeah, I think it's worth getting a more concrete understanding of communication and outreach and exploitation approaches from the teams because I think that's gonna be a big thing in this process.
So what would that look like? That would look like us reaching out.
Sending out a follow-up question that says, hey, can you send us samples or examples of your communication outreach plans, what you've done in the past, whatever. Yeah.
In 24 hours.
I mean, they should have it in a folder.
Yeah.
And
Right,
maybe
right.
like,
Oh,
it's like community communication and outreach and like, maybe tools, right? So we know that the one has the tax calculators. That's something that is also considered by RGB and the others, or yeah, I mean, it's like Andrew, you're super excited about like that tool kind of idea, and it makes a lot of sense because a lot of people were really like, I need to feel like this is more tangible concept to me. Um, so teams that can make an intangible thing like a giant school project more tangible, like that team, that's definitely a leg up for them.
Yeah.
Do we have any other holes that we feel like we need filled?
Um,
so if we were to, I can't think of another hole necessarily. If we were to do that, we would ask them for those samples, artifacts, and then then need to, would that require us to meet again to deliberate that in an open meeting, or would that, what's the process there?
Probably. Yeah, we'd have to get the information back. You can collect it with Greg or Becky and synthesize it down and put it all together, and then we can review it in an open meeting. We can all get it back, the feedback, and then we can only discuss it in an open meeting.
Mm.
But we'd have to wait 48 hours, so it'd have to be, well, that's the problem, is Monday's a holiday, right? So we could have a Tuesday meeting, but that's again school vacation week, which might be hard to get people together.
Right. And you're Heather, you're heading to Disney.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I'll especially I'm the one that's suggesting asking for more information. I'll wiggle whatever I can. I'd have to look at what our evening, or although technically, I guess, we don't have school hours next week, so it could kind of be any time of the day as long as I'm not in the middle of Galaxy's Edge. But
Yeah,
is there a way for us to ask them as well to try to dig into a little more about, like, I guess, comfort or vision for the two types of projects? Like, it sounds like one big gray area for you guys is with RGB, or potential concern is they talked a lot about sort of that option 2 world. So maybe needing more information about, like, are they just not actually comfortable with the option 1 world, or did they just accidentally misskew their presentation? And I know you talked, Andrew, about, like, you've looked into, like, the MSBA stuff and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look at the high school date because they're different, elementary versus middle and versus high school. But I mean, also they have data going past 2012, but it seems like a lot of their project is design services for roofs, and not necessarily like a full, design and construction, versus like the full, partial re-roofing, HVAC, restoration, full roof replacement, architectural engineering services for roof replacement, masonry. It just, I mean, I didn't see re-roofing. I mean, like, if you look at all the representative projects, re-roofing, design and construction administration, partial re-roofing, HVAC, roof replacement, multi-use
Yeah, I mean, they
cross
obviously
education.
do much more. They do more comprehensive projects. I mean, they have, like, permanent on-staff education planners and even just the interior design element. So, like,
Correct.
you're right. It's interesting that they have.
The only examples I see of that is like Woonsocket Educational Department capital improvements, like currently working on RIDE, which is their MSBA, Rhode Island Department of Education, stage 1, stage 2 projects across several district schools, code upgrades, security upgrades, career technical roofs. And, I think they do more of that in Rhode Island. That was kind of what I was alluding to.
And is your concern with Rhode Island, like, I'll be honest, I'm not super acquainted with Rhode Island's education, system equivalent to DESE, all of that. Is the concern that they're too different from the Massachusetts systems, that the gap of understanding is too wide, or?
Well, so the difference, I think, is and he mentioned it, is in Rhode Island they have like different stages, 1, 2, 3. I think he said. I haven't looked at what the stages are. And then for MSBA, like, you handle it soup to nuts. You do the whole thing as a designer. I think they focus on the early, like, design part of the piece of the actual building, like the construction-y part, not so much of the educational or the full, OPM kind of designer like once you get past that preliminary like feasibility part into the actual, what do we call it? The second phase was feasible. So that's just whatever the real design phase versus like kind of the more hypothetical. Like one thing I didn't care for was the estimator on RGB. He made a comment that like, well, at this point in time, we're just using square footage. We're not really looking at like which windows are you buying.
Mm-hmm.
That was something Arrow Street was able to do with us and PMNC to say, we're looking at a facade, but we had originally picked this type of material. But if we went with a metal material, it would save us $1 million. It didn't seem like what they were talking about square footage is what we did in the PDP, the preliminary design, where we just looked at random square footages and dollars per square foot. We didn't really get into that next level down, which I think is part of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong, but I thought the RFS was for feasibility and the next like 2 phases. I have to pull it up.
Yeah, actually, that's a good place for us to go, is to look at that. Just take a look at the RFS.
Well, let me pull it up just to make sure.
Yeah, to conduct a feasibility study and associated design, planning, architectural, engineering work, and wetlands analysis for a renovation and improvement option. Activities will commence upon the consultant selection and execution of a contract and the issuance of a notice to proceed.
Yeah, so I think it's that second. The feasibility is just like a base, using square footage, rough numbers. But when we did the second phase and design, that's when you get a lot more detailed in your cost estimates. And they have an in-house guy, and that was their in-house guy. And I don't know, I just felt I didn't like that comment.
On a side note, I wasn't very impressed by him, like throughout of his answers. But
I actually don't like that they don't outsource. I mean, they said it was one of their benefits that they can go back and make tweaks on the fly. But I think, that look,
I'm here. I'm just plugging in for a second.
no worries.
I don't know, maybe would it be beneficial if we shift mindsets a little bit instead of like looking big picture, note, so on and so forth, break it down to strengths and weaknesses, and then seeing where sort of like the critical elements are. Like maybe there are a bunch of strengths that are with one of the teams, but they are not as important as something that is a weakness.
mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought I had RGB significantly lower than tap B in every category across the board. So I didn't think they didn't have any strengths. Craig, we do have a hand raised if you'd let a comment.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Litt.
Hi, Tim Litt. You seem to be kind of stuck, so I thought I'd stick in a couple of observations.
Please do.
Helps.
Yes.
So I guess I'll start with, by chance, I was looking at the Martha's Vineyard High School calculator. It's by no means as detailed as what we put together. It's basically you put in the value of your property and you get an answer. I think clearly you want to get to the point where you can actually compare options when you get to the point that you have several. On RGB, one of the things that struck me was the style. I mean, the idea of taking people out for drinks and dinner. I'm not sure that would pass our ethics laws. It's certainly not, the kind of the approach. The whole thing didn't resonate with me. And then the third observation I'll make is that in the previous committee, you had a subcommittee that was responsible for communications. Here it seems like you're moving towards outsourcing communications. I'm not sure if that's an intentional strategy, and if it is, I'm not sure how much you really want to do that, because I think that the town owns the decision, and while you can get help from the designer, I'm not sure that outsourcing it all to them, which is sort of what it sounds like is going on, is what you want to do. So those were my three quick observations.
Yeah, I don't think we're looking to outsource it, and we had a communication subcommittee before, but we're so small now, it doesn't really make sense to have a 3-person subcommittee of a 5-person committee. But I would agree with you, Tim, there. And I think, the guy I wrote down, like, that I'll take everybody out to. I didn't really like one thing that I liked about TAPE and didn't really like RGB is they always talked about that core group. Like, I just got to convince that core group that will convince everybody else. And I'll take the core group out to dinner, and that's how we'll get through some of the issues. Whereas TAPE mentioned, like, they're very willing to look at a minority idea and option and talk about whether it's a short term or maybe they have to invest some time in looking through that. Whereas it sounded more like RGB is just like, listen, we're just going to focus on the people that are going to drive the whole committee, and those minority, opinions, we can kind of like make them go away. So that was one that I got, that the differentiating of the evolving or unclear. I had a much different score from one to the other on how you get them back on track, but that was my take.
Yeah, I think that the communication style of some of the RGB presentation was not something that necessarily resonates with me. It felt at times a little like the line about taking out the drinks, schmoozy.
It's salesy.
Yeah.
Well, it was salesy, but yeah.
And so I think that's where, and so it doesn't resonate with me, and that's where I was like, well, does it resonate with does that resonate with the grumpy old men? That they say it does. I'm not sure, but it's not. There were clearly efforts to engage that population in the previous efforts. And so I wonder, I don't necessarily know if that's if they're going to bring anything new to that front. I would not want to necessarily. I view it as, and rather than outsourcing, no, but utilizing this firm, as a supplement for our talking points, for our communication.
I mean,
if they have those resources.
Annie had to design the bumper stickers and the the street, the signs, and like that was all done by. It would have been love to have a design team do all that, and obviously give it to us, and we're going to run with it. But to have some people that can help put the collateral together and can help set up and have those conversations. Yeah, I mean, would be nice. But yeah, obviously we're going to do the core communication from us. I mean, that's going to come from us.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think to bring this home, I think there's two paths forward, right? One, we can just take the vote tonight on who we want to move forward, or we can go back with certain follow-up questions for some of them. But I obviously have different opinion than everybody else, so I'm strongly in favor of one, but I'm happy to hold off if both of you want that additional information. It doesn't hurt to have more information, but I'm not sure how much. If I got it, I would change my opinion.
If we're looking, if the only thing is artifacts, I saw artifacts in the Tepe presentation. I felt like they had some real examples of the card, just the graphics that they were showing. And then I do view in some ways each group's overall just their presentation as artifacts of how they communicate. I did feel visually the RGB, again, as we're processing this, I felt visually the RGB slides their main points were very small, and then they had pictures that were very challenging.
You couldn't read the presentation. It was like size 2 font.
Right. So I felt like there is elements of that is an artifact of their presentation that I felt was underwhelming. I'm leaning closer. I'm not sure what necessarily more I would need to hear or see. I'm leaning more as we're processing more. I'm going more towards Tepe. What is the voting process from here?
Well, I mean, we would just make a motion on which one to send forward to, I guess I don't know if it's contract negotiations or to the select board to approve the contract negotiations. But
we would have to do a reference check before that, right?
Yeah, if we strongly feel one. My suggestion was if we make a motion for one, and we would allow Craig to do the reference checks. And if they came back as absolutely terrible, then maybe we revisit it. But again, most of the time it's usually kind of just to making sure you check the box there.
Thinking back to our meeting on Monday, Tabe was Tabe the one that in our initial reviews ended up coming out as like the highest consensus vote?
I have it here. So
I'm trying to run my head through all the materials we've seen from them.
Tape was the highest score, it was 8.7. And then Arrow Street was 8.303. And RGB. No, so Tape was 8.7. RGB was 8.3 and Arrow Street was 8.03.
I felt like Taipei was kind of the immediate, we all kind of agreed it was somewhere in the top.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they were by far one of my top ones. I don't remember where they were the top one. I can't
It
quite
was your
remember.
number one,
That's
like
what I
my
thought.
number
Yeah.
two, Craig's number two. But yeah, I think, for me, Jason, Craig, everybody except for you, Heather, was number one on Arrow Street, just because they had, so much going for them. But I just think the presentation didn't get me over the edge.
Yeah, I think they just have a lot of shine, and at least in terms of what we've seen, not necessarily a lot of substance. And we need a lot of substance right now. But we've already eliminated them anyway, so we don't need to talk about that. But I mean, between thinking about Tappy's original proposal materials and tonight listening to what we've all been talking through and all of that, my only continuing concern with them is just I was very unimpressed with their verbal communication tonight, but that's my one thing. And so, I mean, then again, it could be that it just wasn't their night. Like, um, or whatever. And that's something that is, I feel like, workable. If you don't have the skill sets, that's less workable. Um, if you don't know how to do the building, that's less workable, but we can fudge and find ways to make sure the communication is clear and effective, I think.
Well, and also like what is the most effective or like the way in which people are going to gather their information from them? And is it necessarily in this setting or is it going to be in kind of the, more of a multi-platform approach,
Mm-hmm.
which they seem to have a team that does that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, we're going to be the ones that are going to be talking in front of people mostly. But if they can back us up with the materials and, postcards and pretty
Yeah.
videos, that's kind of like I wasn't them. I think it was Vertex or one of the other firms that we were looking at. Like I really like they had like a really good like Facebook videos they created and things like that, which we didn't get any of that. But I'd assume that these guys could put something to get that together.
Mm-hmm.
And their presentation was a lot more visually appealing than RGB's.
Yeah.
Well, quite literally legible.
Yeah.
No, I mean like even the
Yeah.
the written one.
Yeah, no, that's true. All right, well, wait, I mean, I know we haven't taken a vote, but have we found our way to a consensus? So we should
I
vote?
think so. Let's just recommend it. I move that we move forward TAPE Architects to reference check and contract negotiation.
Second.
And give the chair the ability to work with the school, superintendent's office to get the reference checks and to alert us if there's any significant red flags.
Second.
All right.
All right. Time for a vote.
Roll call vote, Greg.
Roll call vote. Andrew.
Aye.
Heather.
Aye.
Chair is aye.
Mark, did you get everything you needed there? Or is there anything else we need to add into a motion? If he hasn't fallen asleep.
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
Not for much longer, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think I'm fading fast.
Mm-hmm.
But is that motion good enough for what you guys need for the next step?
I think so. I think, whether you want to have Becky help you put together something, but I think the board will just need a letter. That here is the recommendation for the committee to, award the contract subject to, award the bid subject to successful contract negotiations.
Yep. The other motion we should take that Jason mentioned is somebody that wants to work on the contract. Dottie does not have school next week. She just doesn't get April break. So I'm happy to take that on unless you guys Craig, you really want to do it.
That sounds great.
You shook your head so fast, you're like, no. You're like, no.
So Craig, why don't you make that motion?
I motion that Andrew works with the contract negotiation.
Second.
Roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Chair is aye.
All right. What we got on our agenda? Wrap this thing up. Meeting schedule. Yeah, I don't think we have anything pending for a while, so once we get through that. Any business properly brought forth? I'm good. Good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Public comment? All right, seeing none. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
That's my favorite motion to do.
All right. So we have to do a roll call vote for that. Yeah.
Every
Roll
time
call
on Zoom,
vote.
it's annoying.
Roll call
When
vote.
you're in person, you don't have to. You can just raise the hand. But yeah.
Yeah. Roll call vote. Andrew?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Chair is aye.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Heather.
Right.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Have a
Good
good
night,
vacation
guys.
if I don't talk to you, and we'll keep moving this forward.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Enjoy Disney, Heather.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. See you, everyone.